Hey guys, welcome back to Press Restart, a gaming channel with myself and AR Video Games, where we talk games and gaming news. If you do happen to want to see us individually, you can find me and my wife over at the Retro Room channel on YouTube, as well as at our respective social medias. And for Mr. Ash?
Hey guys, how's it going? You can find me over at AR Games on YouTube. I'm finally saying it correctly now. I kept saying it was AR Video Games for a while and I'd changed it. I was telling people the wrong thing.
Yeah. It seems like, and I'm not sure if it's just, I mean, it's same with me. It seems like everyone's going through some sort of a rebrand nowadays, and it's just taking a little time to catch up.
It's true, everyone's changing their names, and I already can't keep up. So
yeah, that's
I'm just lost at all times.
I got lucky. I just changed my logo. Name is the same. So.
Yeah, the logo's good. You're doing a good job on it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm enjoying. So yeah, if you decide you want to check us out independently, please go check out AR Games, Ash's channel, and if you feel so inclined, please come check out the Retro Room too at your leisure. But I will go ahead and jump into Press Restart. Like I said, a channel about games and gaming news, and we usually start it off with what games we've been playing. So what games have you been playing?
Oh, excuse me. Finally tried Deathloop.
Oh.
Which is, for anyone that's aware, it's the greatest thing ever invented by anyone, according to review sites. 11 out of 10s and heaven. I finally played it, and like a high praise game's not for me. Didn't enjoy it.
Just not your cup of tea, or?
It's so the way it kind of holds your hand that I didn't think it would. It's this game about doing everything your own way, and until I didn't play it like for hours and hours and hours, but sometimes you just know when a game's not for you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't need to play it for 25 hours to realise you're not going to like it. Like some games, it's not for me, and the gameplay's not fun, I'm out. Like I can't do it. So the world was intriguing, and this mystery about why you're there, you keep waking up, because it's one of those loop games, you know. Can't remember the actual genre term. Oh, what is he? You know what I mean? When you die and you reset stuff.
Oh, procedurally generated?
Well, not so much, because the map I think stays the same. Yeah, it's like a loop. When you die and then come back, you got to do everything again. Although I think you keep some items and stuff. The world was intriguing. There's like mystery about why you're there and what's going on. It's just that's not enough to keep me when I don't enjoy playing it. I thought the one thing that I would enjoy would be the shooting mechanics and the actual gameplay, and it just felt weird to me and like clunky in a way that I haven't felt from Arcane games. These are the guys that made Prey, which is I think one of the best games ever, which is the 2017 one. You played that?
I've given it a small try. I'm infinitely more familiar with its predecessor of the same name.
All right, I can't remember that one, but and they've made Dishonored, didn't they too?
Yes.
Just those games, so much better. Like I'm shocked that Deathloop is the game from that team that gets all this praise. I feel like Prey is quite underrated, and I know a lot of people praise Dishonored now, but I don't feel like that was the case when it came out. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like a lot of people weren't fans of it. I just couldn't get into Deathloop, and I had the game for a while. My girlfriend's always like joking around, like you're not even touching the game. Like I do this a lot. It's a habit of mine I need to stop when I buy a game and it's just sat there for 3 months. I'm like, oh yeah, I bought this, I'll give it a try. I finally tried it. It's not for me. Like I said, the world's intriguing. It's just it's not enough to keep me playing. Like some games, if the gameplay's there, I'll stick through almost anything. Whether it's got terrible acting, bad story, like gameplay's important. That's first for me. It's the most important thing. Deathloop didn't even have that for me. It just felt clunky, and I didn't like the way the character moved. I was surprised a bit, because obviously everyone was saying it's like best thing ever created. Like I can't believe how many high reviews this game got. I feel like I saw one guy who was like, this is okay, and he got just piled on. I remember saying it like wasn't amazing. This is what happens now, isn't it?
You have
to jumps on someone, you know.
You have to have, your opinion has to fall in line with everybody else's opinion, or otherwise it's like I just to take a quick foray into my insight on that, if I have any. Truly, when Cyberpunk came out, and I think I may have mentioned this in an earlier episode, but when Cyberpunk came out, I had been playing it on the Series X and was enjoying it, and definitely could tell there were parts of it that were rushed and didn't have the polish that they should have had, considering the development cycle. But also knowing the development cycle had been really plagued with issue and social pressures and such, kind of took that into account and said, hey, this is a pretty good game. Is it the best game ever? No. Is it an awful game? At least on the console that I'm playing it on? No. And so I had put out there, hey, this game, I kind of like it. It's not too bad. And oh man, I get so many just you're a CD Projekt Red fanboy and da-da-da. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just saying I enjoyed the game. Like, I agree they shouldn't have rushed things, and it should work better on other consoles. But on the whole, I'm having fun with this game. So
It's the thing with Deathloop 2 is it runs well. Like, I didn't encounter any issues in terms of like performance and stuff. It didn't grab me. Like, it's like loop-based games. Like, there are so many better ones, in my opinion, than Deathloop. Like, while I'm playing Deathloop, I could just be playing Returnal, which I think is 10 times better. Or just any of these indie games that have that same format. Roguelikes, that's the term. Just popped in my head.
okay.
See, like one of those. It, like, was explaining things constantly, and I get a lot of that's to do with because it's the start of the game where you see a lot of that. I feel like with Deathloop, it's just stuff was just popping on screen at all times. Like, here's how you do this, and this is, and I'm like, just let me figure it out. Like, it's supposed to be this game where you can approach it any way you want. And like, just constantly telling me to, like, you can do this, and did you know you can use this? And it's like, well, I know now, but let me learn. It wasn't for me. I couldn't be into it, man.
Sure, yeah.
I do think it's overrated, I'll say that, because people lost their shit over this game. Like, I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, so I already had that in my brain, so I understand that could have probably played a little to when I first put it on. Just constant praise, which is, I can't stand this stuff about like social media and all these review sites just saying you should buy this or this is a masterpiece, and then you've got that in your head before you've even tried it yourself.
Yeah.
So you've already got this impression that like could alter yours. I don't know. So much alter it, but like you've already got an impression going in instead of being just completely fresh, and it's the way things are now.
I completely agree with it. I mean, I think that's I haven't gotten to play a lot of roguelites of late. I guess if you would consider Hades probably a roguelike.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
I honestly think that game's pretty great. I really enjoy it. I like the art style, and I like it being in this kind of isometric, like there was another game Transistor, I think, that I played that I really liked.
That's the same team. A game warmed up to me, Hades. Wasn't a fan when I first played it, but found myself thinking about it when I wasn't playing it. I was like, I'll give it another try, and I'll keep playing. I haven't finished it or even got that far, but I have enjoyed it more the more I've played, so I need to go back to that.
Yeah, I haven't had the you mentioned Returnal, and you mentioned of course Deathloop there. I have not yet had the opportunity to play either of those, so I think the probably latest roguelike I have played would be Hades, which I have on the Switch and the Xbox. So
The art style in that game, just the level design.
Well, and I feel like the game is also voiced in a way that it's self-aware, and it lets you know that it knows what it's doing, and I think that's clever. I mean, I have a soft spot for clever writing, so.
Right. Yeah.
But see,
that's all I've been playing, really. That's all I've been playing. I've been playing a couple just random multiplayer games with Haley. Like, we play a lot of that Puyo Tetris.
Okay.
And that's just always fun. We just play for like half an hour. That's it, really. I haven't played much. I'm waiting for the next Horizon and Elden Ring. I'm waiting for those games in February. Those are like the next big thing I'm kind of waiting to play. I'm kind of interested to jump back into Prey.
Okay.
To playing Deathloop, it's reminding me of that studio, and I just don't want to play Prey again. But yeah, that's all I've been playing.
Is it the same? So you said you weren't terribly familiar with the first Prey. Do you know by chance if it's the new Prey is the same studio as the old Prey?
I don't think it is. I might be wrong on this, but I think Bethesda had the name, or they had the IP. Arcane was just making this space game. Then Bethesda wanted them to basically call it Prey, put it as Prey. It's not necessarily a sequel to the old one, or I don't even think it's even a reboot. They just gave them the name, which is why it's so confusing.
Okay.
I know the lead guy who made Prey, he was against the idea for ages. He didn't want to do it because of that. People are just going to compare it to the old one, and it has nothing to do with it. Wouldn't even say it's a sequel or a remake. It's just its own thing that happens to have the same name. It's really weird.
That is weird. I mean, like I said, I don't want to compare it necessarily. I don't have the new one, or at least I've not really played the new one. I do have the new one. I bought it as part of an Arcane bundle, I guess it would have been, because it came with the 3 Dishonoreds and then the Prey.
Yeah.
But I like the old one a lot. I thought the old one was a cool concept. You know, this Native American hero and aliens coming and abducting, you know, him and his girlfriend and his family, and watching what the aliens are trying to do. It's really cool, and they do it to they do it in the coolest possible way. They do it to Blue Oyster Cult's "Don't Fear the Reaper," which is amazing.
I love that song.
Oh, I do too. It's such a good song.
The new Prey's more, say, it's very heavily influenced by like System Shock and BioShock and those type of games.
Okay.
Like it has a lot of influence, especially System Shock. I think it's heavily inspired by that. I think it leans more to that, like them immersive sim kind of games.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably should go and get, because I guess that seems to be a little bit more along the lines of what Arcane specializes in some way.
Yeah.
I know.
Right.
I know my wife was playing We Happy Few, and she really enjoyed it. And when she found out she enjoyed that, I was able to recommend Dishonored and BioShock, and she felt completely at home jumping from We Happy Few to one or the other. So,
well, they all kind of share a similar feel, don't they? All those games, in a way.
Yeah, they do. Well, I mean, I think that even in Dishonored and We Happy Few, the world feels the same, but I feel like that gameplay wise, they all do. So. So that's my thing when it comes to games that I play. Like and that's why I am, me personally, predominantly retro. That doesn't mean I won't branch out and play newer games. But like you were saying, with people putting out these ratings and reviews and these new impressions, I don't really want to have my view skewed by those. I'm kind of going back and playing. So we're playing. If you have had the opportunity to check it out, we're playing It Takes Two on the channel now.
Oh, good.
It's a lot of fun. We'll likely be playing more of that on today's as well. Continuing where we had left off, but we're playing that, and then I'm going back and finding games that I enjoy. If I get a game brand new, it has to be a game that I understand the franchise, and I'm excited about it because of the franchise, and I completely am. It's not review, so I'm going back and replaying on New Game Plus Resident Evil 8 Village.
Oh, nice.
Which I really, really enjoyed. And then between that and my normal kind of, this would be, I guess, a pseudo retro. We actually had a store selling some Switch games for a really good price, so we were able to pick up a Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword for Switch, and it was so I've jumped into that, and then of course I'm always playing some sort of a Castlevania. So I've been playing on the Castlevania Advance Collection again. This time I'm playing through the Dracula X.
Still need to get those. Never played them.
They're so good. I say that I don't want to skew anyone's view as well as have my own skewed, but for me, like, I love Castlevania, the Castlevania games, platformers like Mario, but they have the early ones had this kind of whip delay, so that it was not just about being able to jump over the cracks, and it wasn't just about being able to hit the enemies. It was about being able to balance those two things, because they both had good and bad. In Castlevania, if you jump, you can't change direction midair, so you have to choose when you want to jump. And if you get hit, you get knocked back. When you whip, there's a 2-frame delay, maybe 3-frame delay. I think it's 2 frames. 2-frame delay, so you have to, time that out. And then when they started kind of moving forward and the technology got more advanced, they started becoming more like Symphony of the Night, where you started picking up items and choosing powerful weapons and speccing a person out. And there are like 40-something Castlevania games out there. I would argue the vast majority of them are pretty good. I even enjoy Lords of Shadow, but...
Yeah. I've played all of them. I've never played the Game Boy ones.
Oh.
The Game Boy Advance ones. But I've played Castlevania. Like, I really like 1, 3. Did they first add the fact that you can move and jump? Was that 4?
Yes. Yeah.
That's when they first added it, wasn't it? You could actually move while you jumped. That changed it so much.
Yes. That, and then they did the 8-directional whip. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I thought you were saying you hadn't played Castlevania, but...
Oh, no, I've played a lot of them. I've just never played the Game Boy ones or any in that collection, the latest collection.
They're really... So I feel like the Dracula X one is going to feel like Castlevania 4 graphics with Castlevania's 1 through 3, or 1 and 3 game feel.
Oh, yeah.
But the 3 advanced ones are going to feel very Symphony of the Night. I honestly think anybody who enjoys Castlevania games at all, especially if you enjoy Symphony, are really going to enjoy the GBA ones.
I'll need to check them out soon. There's too many games out there.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Honestly, overwhelmed. Need to stop looking at so many.
I've kind of given it a rest from picking up the newer games, and just kind of tried to stay with either games that have had enough for the hype to die down so that I could develop my own opinion, or games that I know that are just polished in new format. So, but I guess kind of in that same line, right? Bringing back old things that are meant to be polished in new format. We had a...
That was good.
Thank you. That wasn't on purpose. That was just me thinking on the spot. So I'm glad it came together. We were talking about, and I know that this is... I'm going to use your abbreviated version, because I don't know how the original one's meant to be said either. Frosk, is it? Yeah. So G4 TV apparently is trying to come back. They're trying to become relevant again. For anybody who isn't familiar with G4 TV used to be a gaming channel back when TV was more prevalent than internet-based medias. And they did reviews and kind of inside looks to new games. There was a member of that team, however, during one of the live streams that were being done, and this particular person's name was Frosk, and they seem to have a pretty big opinion on, I guess, gaming being and game shows being inherently sexist, and talking about how, and I'm going to use your quote that you've typed out here, but I did hear the live thing, saying that she was upset and that without a doubt there would be backlash, in parentheses for her, as I'm not as bangable, and that's in quotes as well, as the previous hosts, and to which she was referring to previous hosts such as Olivia Munn and Morgan Webb, and that's back when the G4 had been before this kind of internet media version. So she's talked about, and I'm going to try and keep this in a not censored way, but in a polite way, I should say. She was talking about she believes that it's become acceptable that you can just talk about how much that you have, she says, jerked off to a woman, saying that it's not a compliment and it's dehumanizing. So she's very upset that she feels that gaming has become uber sexualized. She feels that she's going to be the victim of backlash because she does not take it in a sexual direction. And then she decided to end it after this 5 or 6 minute rant by saying, if you don't like it, don't watch it. which some people didn't like it and have stopped watching it. I don't know if this is the best encapsulation. If you do get a chance, I highly recommend anyone who has seen this, if you're looking for citation, to take a look at the clip. But I have to ask, before I go into G4, just to focus on the individual, what do you think about this whole rant? Like, what do you think about what she's saying about there being inherent sexism in gaming? And do you feel like if she does receive backlash, that it will predominantly be because she is not as sexualized, or cannot be as sexualized as the previous hosts or hostesses?
Well, first off, I think as well is that it's always men. There's been this more come out that it's always men that are criticising her. Even though I've seen, researching this, I've seen a lot of women actually have a problem with it, but she never mentions them, which is,
Mm-hmm.
Of course she doesn't. The issue I have with this is, like, how do I say it? First off, she's not wrong with these live stream chats. I'm going to say that. She's not wrong. They're terrible. Have you ever glanced at one of these like shows where the chat's just flying down? You start to lose brain cells, like some of these people.
Okay.
She's not wrong. Like, you just. So my point is, why even look at it when you're on a live show? Like, clearly have some insecurities here, because when she said, without a doubt there'll be backlash as I'm not as bangable, just out of nowhere. Like, what's that got to do with anything?
Mm-hmm.
She's clearly got some insecurities and stuff, and whether that's actually something someone actually said in the live stream, no one knows. Like, don't be glancing at this thing while you're trying to do a show and then just have this outburst because, like, and then claim it's because you're a woman, because it's not. There's people that have had issue with her because she's just not very intelligent when it comes to the topics she's paid to cover.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
There's countless stuff where she's talking, just people get things wrong, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone gets things wrong. No one's an expert, but like, I've seen her on show. Like, I gave this show a chance because I'm a fan of The Completionist, who's a part of the show.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, X-Play is what I'm talking about. That was the gaming show. I'll be honest, I've tried to watch other G4 stuff and it's just terrible. I can't get through 2 minutes. X-Play was their game show, which had Adam Sessler on, who I don't like in terms of things I've heard him say, but when it comes to video games, he knows his stuff. Like, he knows what he's talking about. And he's a pretty good reviewer.
Mm-hmm.
So he was on the show, The Completionist was on the show, so I was like, this has got to be pretty good. And then it just results in this stuff, and then she going on rants with people applauding in the background, like agreeing that their viewers are like shit. Like, what are you trying to do? You're going to lose subscribers, and it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
They're just tanking. Like, and I wouldn't call myself a fan, but it's technically, I could call myself one of those people that's not watching now, because I was giving X-Play a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm like, I just can't be dealing with it. And going back to, just I've been thinking about this a lot, just how I might trip over what I'm trying to say here, but going back to how wrong she is, how she's claiming like Xbox own Bioware. She says stuff like Hogwarts Legacy is an Xbox exclusive. There's nothing wrong with like, anything's wrong, but it's constant.
Sure.
You're getting paid to talk about this stuff and cover this stuff, and then when people criticize you, you're just calling them sexist. You're a woman. No, it's because you're getting stuff wrong every show you're on. The other hosts, they don't help her because no one corrects her. I don't know if it's because everyone's in fear because of the fucking backlash that happens nowadays. It's ridiculous. Nobody will say a word. You'd think Adam Sessler or The Completionist would say, well, they're not owned by Xbox, like, you're wrong, but no one says anything, and I feel like that makes it look even worse.
Mm-hmm.
She's just allowed to go on these random things that are just factually wrong. There's nothing wrong with saying you prefer Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
She also claimed, she said PlayStation have nothing in 2022. I do find that hilarious, but that's your opinion, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not like well, it is incorrect because of the games that are coming out, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
She's allowed her opinion, but she's saying things that are actually wrong, and no one's saying anything, and that's the issue I have with her. Mm-hmm. It was like a few shows before her rant. She's talking about the BioWare thing and countless stuff. She's got a lot of things wrong, and she's just sitting there. No one seems to have the balls to say that's actually wrong, and I feel like there's no actual discussion on that show. Everyone's got the exact same view. Everyone pats one another on the back. It's the same as every other big game site out there. There's no difference. Just like 6 people on a show that all have the exact same opinion. It's just boring. That's my issue I have with her, and that she blames that on that she's a woman. Like, it's ridiculous. Nothing to do with the fact she's a woman. Oh, it's insane.
So one of the things that I'll say, this is just to your point. This is before I give my take on her. To your point of everybody having the exact same opinion and there being no dynamisty within the group's reviews and their opinions. One of the things that I used to like, and I'm sure you may have subscribed to this as well. Did you ever get Game Informer magazine?
Never did, but I'm very aware of it.
Okay, so I used to get Game Informer magazines. I still do get them. I don't pay any attention to them really these days, but back, when you didn't have internet access, it wasn't as prevalent, it wasn't as refined and as clear as it is now, and back when you had you needed to go to printed media, they used to have where they would talk about all of the games that were coming out, and then they would have the reviews of games that had freshly come out. And I really like this idea. I'd love to do something with it at some point as well, where they would have their primary reviewer who would sit there, and that was his job or her job, just to sit there and play the game. They would give a review. They would break that review, that number down, into graphics, playability, story, replayability, just all of the things that you really would care about in a game. And then, even though this whole review, 1 or 2 page review, had been done by the main reviewer, they would have a sub-reviewer, second reviewer, who would give what was called the second opinion, and they would write this little column in the box and say, yeah, I have a second opinion. I do not believe it is as good as this guy says it is, because I didn't like this, this, and this. Or I really liked it better than this guy because I really like this, this, and this. And sometimes the variance between opinion 1 and opinion 2 was maybe 0.5 or 1 point. Sometimes it was drastic. Sometimes it was a couple of points, 2 points, 3 points, 4 points. I really like that idea. I like the idea of having that, good and bad. Now, moving to the more specific, when it comes to her, there are a couple. There were a couple of things when I went back and I listened to it, and I wanted to dissect it, and I wanted to listen to or read other articles and see what their point of view was and in how they reported it. I will also start off by agreeing with her when it comes to talking about, with any woman, not just her, but with any woman, talking about how much talking about how much she uses the quote jerked off to. I do agree. Like, there's really no reason, in my opinion, to do that. Yeah, that shouldn't be why you watch a show. Like, if you're watching a gaming show, at least in my opinion, you should be watching for gaming things, gaming news. That having been said, we also know, and I'm not putting this out there and saying this is a given, we're taking this into account, we're assuming, we know for a fact that in order to increase viewability and viewership, rather, not viewability, viewership, that there are people that are hired that are supposedly, quote unquote, easy on the eyes. In fact, to give reference to Olivia Munn, the reason that she didn't, she turned down a role in Deadpool 2 because she said she's spent most of her career getting hired to be eye candy. She was okay with that, but in Deadpool 2, she didn't want to do that because it was action orientated. She wanted an action role. So she referred to her previous times. She admitted that she had been hired and understood that she was being hired to be quote unquote eye candy by whoever was hiring her at that time, and that she didn't want to do that. I think honestly, like I said, I don't think that you should necessarily be watching a show for some, to see some host or hostess. But I do believe that there are people that hire certain people because they want them to do that. They want, I want to have the attractive woman on there. It's the beautiful assistant to the magician. It's the Vanna White to turning the letters on the Wheel of Fortune, right? It's the reason you
Exactly.
have when you're watching a game show, you're watching, what is it? Is it Let's Make a Deal with Howie Mandel? What is that?
Sure.
The briefcase one.
I know what you're talking about. I think it's called something different over here. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Oh, Deal or No Deal.
That's it.
Oh,
That's
so
the
yeah.
same thing.
That's why all of the briefcases are held by women in show dresses and such and so on. So my point being is, I'm not speaking to the moral standing of that. I can't speak to that, but I am speaking to that people do that because of its efficacy, right? It does get people to pay more attention, and it does get people to but yeah, the conversation about how many women that you've done this or that to, that I think that's completely inappropriate. I personally, like, especially when you're watching a show, like, that's not really a part of the conversation I would have. That having been said, I firstly don't believe that anything that I've seen, at least so far in gaming, has been inherently sexist. I don't think that gaming itself is implicitly sexist, and I agree that I think it's become a very large trope, if nothing else, to foist genuine criticisms off as something that demonizes the critic.
It's true.
So, if there's a difference between making a mistake or two and being bad at your job. And so, if you make a mistake and then you correct that mistake, or whatever the case is, that, puts you back on the right path, and then the next show you don't make that kind of a mistake, or you maybe stutter or misstep, your mistake is less egregious as it was the first time or whatever, then you're showing this improvement. I don't think anybody will call you out for that. I think a lot of times that happens. But when you start making mistakes continuously, and you're making decently large mistakes, like you're saying, naming console exclusives that aren't console exclusives, or talking about permanent exclusives versus timed exclusives, and not understanding how to differentiate between those, then there has to be a point where they need somebody that is more qualified than you. And you can't just take those legitimate criticisms and say, oh, it's because I'm not as attractive as the previous host is, or it's not because I'm as... Yeah, that's the point. You're not hired based off of how attractive you are right now. You're hired on your skill set, and that skill set is supposed to be journalism, and it's supposed to be journalism as it pertains to gaming.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have no idea why she was hired and what she was hired for based on her knowledge. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I'm not talking about looks, each to their own.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how she was hired for her knowledge either. But Jesus Christ.
There was and this, I went a little bit farther down the rabbit hole, and I'm not going to opine. I'm going to try not to opine on it myself. This specific instance, I can always opine on it as a whole if necessary. But one of the articles that I had written stated that they believed that that this particular gaming network, in order to maximize how acceptable or how palatable it was to the general audience, were hiring based off of not only skill set, but also popularity and diversity quota.
I think that's 100% the case, and I think that's the case with a lot of things nowadays. It's just, I don't see how it's not. It's clear.
And granted, I don't know on that in this way, but that's the same thing. Like, if you're getting hired, that's my thing. Like, I feel like that, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that when you're hiring somebody, if your main goal is to be, quote unquote, and yet again, I think this is I don't like this term either, but it's a term that's was used by Olivia Munn, so I'm going to use it as well. If you are paid to be quote unquote eye candy, I think that's kind of advertised to you. I don't think that it's a secret. I think they tell you, hey, you're a very attractive woman, and we would like if you would bring, we were hoping to increase our male viewership, our male demographic, and we feel that would, I feel like that's communicated to you. And maybe it's not always, and maybe there are these kinds of awful and egregious offenses that are, kept under the radar. This, I don't feel like, is one of those. I feel like that this was a group of people or person levying legitimate criticisms to someone who wasn't doing their job in a way that the viewers found appropriate or found to be competent, and they decided to criticize. And she says, well, now that I'm being criticized by multiple people, I'm going to foist that off over to the fact that it's people being sexist, or it could be anything. It could be people being sexist, it could be people being racist, or whatever the case is, but some sort of bias which demonizes my critic. Yet again, I don't disagree with her. You should not dehumanize. You shouldn't dehumanize women, and I feel like, or anyone for that matter. And I just don't feel like that's what was happening here. I don't feel like that people were talking about, and maybe some were, maybe a lot were even, but I just don't feel like that's the total encapsulation of her incompetence. I feel like that most of the people were probably legitimately criticizing her, and then so there were also your internet trolls. And I guess that brings me to the last point in this. When you put yourself out there in front of anyone, internet especially, right? Because internet is so widespread, and there are all kinds of people. There are trolls and awful people out there, and there are great people and legitimate critics, and there are friends to be made, and there are enemies to be had, and all of these different things. You put yourself out in that spectrum, you have to know that, and it does become your responsibility, because you're only responsible for you and how you react, that you are going to put yourself out there to criticisms. This very podcast, when it's put out there, is probably going to have criticisms with people that say, we love what you do, and there are going to be people that say, pitchforks and torches, we hate you, take it off the air. And we just have to go say, okay, what do we want to do? What do we feel like we need to do? In her case, I don't think that she realizes that she can't dictate what everybody else's opinion is. She has to just know that when she's put herself out there, there are going to be people that are going to say awful things, and while I disagree with them saying those awful things, they're still going to do it. All you have to do is figure out how you want to proceed. Her saying that is not going to stop it. In fact, it may perpetuate it. I think it's made more people angry. So anyway, that's my little rant as well. I do apologize, but goodness.
That's the thing. Like, what she started off saying isn't wrong. She just carried on, and then says the fucking infamous line of, if you don't like it, don't watch it, which is what Battlefield did, and then Battlefield 5 didn't sell. If you don't like it, don't play it, and people say, alright, then we won't play it. It's just the hypocrisy of co-host too, specifically Adam Sessler, who was originally on the old G4, which had a ton of parts of the show that was like sleazy and focused on the women. He's sitting there clapping like a seal as she fucking talks about this stuff, and it's just, I can't stand hypocrites when it with this stuff, man. They almost annoy me more than her. They're just sitting there clapping, knowing they've done this stuff, or like, look at their old show, and like, it's fine if the show's different now. I haven't got to always judge people on what they did before, but the fact he's just clapping like he's above it all when he was a part of that old show with Olivia Munn and Morgan Webb, who, by the way, knew her shit. Morgan Webb knew her stuff when it came to games. But to just put in her as one of the hosts that was bangable is kind of disrespectful too. The whole thing, one.
Well, and that so I mean, I'm assuming based off what you said. Did you watch G4, the original G4 back then?
Wasn't like a big fan, but I was just aware, and I watched some of the show. And it's like, like I said, X-Play. I was always a fan of X-Play, because that was the gaming-centered show. Like, I don't care about all these other ones where they're doing goofy like stuff and jumping into pools and shit. Like, all this weird stuff and shoving sausages in Olivia Munn's mouth. You know, Adam Sessler claps along nowadays because he wasn't a part of that show. Hypocrisy, man, it's insane.
Yeah,
like I said, she's not wrong. Like, if you glance at these chats with these bigger streams, it's terrible. It doesn't matter if it's like, I've heard them shit talk the completionist, some of these people in the chats, like, so what he's a guy, so what's your excuse there? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
he's one of the ones that's knowledgeable, like, he actually knows his stuff. I'm like, what was she hired for?
Sure, yeah.
You don't have to be an expert in everything. You can get things wrong. She's being paid to discuss these topics. Like, sorry, she was an esports caster. That was her job. She covered League of Legends and these PC games. She doesn't know shit about consoles, and that's fine. But you're hiring her to talk about them. So she needs to do her research, or she's going to look ridiculous. She looks even more ridiculous when the hosts don't have the balls to say, oh, you're actually wrong, or have a bit of a debate with her. because she'll probably blow up in their face and claim sexism to them, and then they're fired, which is fucking what happens nowadays.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean,
It's just tiring, this stuff, man. You see it's so everywhere now. Just these excuses for you're not good at what you do, but you're blaming it on something else. It's ridiculous.
Well, and yeah, I mean, to add clarity to my point, and I mean, I think you've been pretty articulate in yours. Is I'm not saying that there aren't awful people out there who have exploited people. And I agree with you too. There were definitely those old series, those old fragments of G4. Like, yet again, I'm saying that the people that were hired and participating were likely not just unaware. It wasn't a candid thing where they were like, hey, we're going to do this right now 5 seconds before, and the person didn't have the option to walk off.
Exactly. They know.
Right.
Or they knew. They knew everything. They were probably told, like you said, no problem with it, especially back in the day.
Right. Well, I mean, you had. I feel like it was a little bit more difficult to kind of get things going back then for your specific station, because it's television and you have to buy a time slot. It can't be just something that stays up there forever like it does now with the internet, and people can come and watch it later. So my criticism is not to her calling out, people that are being awful in the chats and all of that. Like, that's not my criticism isn't that there are absolutely awful people who say awful things. My criticism is not to her saying picking the example that she picked there and saying that that's dehumanizing. That absolutely is. That's an awful thing. My criticism is not to her saying if you don't like it, don't watch it. I think that that's a great thing to live by. My criticism is only to firstly blowing things out of proportion and saying just because I'm being criticized, the entire industry is implicitly sexist. And then to taking valid criticisms. There are a ton of invalid ones, I'm sure, but for her taking valid criticisms, and anyone taking valid criticisms and saying, oh, it's because I'm not something that I can't change, versus it's because I'm not actually skilled at this thing. Those are the big points that I have. So I'm not trying to fight against the things that she's saying aren't happening, and not just to her, to anybody, and that they aren't awful things and that they shouldn't stop. I am trying to say that you can't conflate things that are awful things that are happening to you with the industry as indicative of the industry as a whole, and you can't take genuine criticisms and say, oh no, it's because you are sexist. If somebody comes up and criticizes me for what they think is a poor opinion, then I can choose to just disagree with that. I can choose to address it. I can choose to, but I feel like the thing I shouldn't do, the thing that's most disingenuous, is for me to say, oh no, the reason that you have an opinion that's different than mine is because you're objectively bad. That doesn't make sense to me. So
thing too, I just want to point out with her, and so not to point it out, and she clearly has some insecurities, how she goes right to the looks and right to the old hosts,
sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She's mentioned that before, by the way, on a previous show, I remember. Oh, she clearly has issues with that stuff and the chat. If you're like a producer or maybe don't have them looking at the chat while they're doing a live show, like they don't need to.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Just maybe to help the show a little bit. She's clearly glancing at that, and it's bothering her. And it's bothering her enough where she has to stop the show to fucking scream about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe also think, let's not put that on, let them see it while they're doing their part. Maybe take questions at the end, or let the producers pick out specific questions to give them, so they're not scrolling past all this hate. Because obviously, like you said, she's not in the wrong about the basis of what she's saying. You don't want to hear all this shit and insults at you, but at the same time, that's a live chat, and it's not because you're a woman. It's everywhere on the internet. You've just got to ignore it. And I know some people can do that better than others.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's not that easy to just rid of it. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe help her in some way by not letting it be there right when she's live, and she can just look at it and be upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just little things like that. Maybe help the show a little. Well,
and at the same time, I stand by this, and this is, in my opinion, an overarching thing, but specifically in this case, I can't control what the world does. I can't control. There are billions of people on the planet. There are potentially millions, if not hundreds of millions, who will see the content that you're putting out there, especially if you're someone who has some leverage like G4, the new G4 TV with Gerard Khalil and Adam Sessler coming back and all this. So you're going to subject yourself to that. You can't change 100 million or 200 million or a billion people. That's just difficult to do. So if you're unhappy with where you are, in that you have to change the thing you can change, which is you. And I agree with you. Like, you don't necessarily have to leave a job you like because of that, but you do have to understand that that's a hazard of the job. And maybe, like you said, it's worth mentioning to the producer, hey, this is really making me uncomfortable. Can we have someone go through and pick valid questions that somebody will ask us, and we don't see the chat. Like, but I think that her whole rant, the intention was, hey, I'm trying to change the behavior of all of you people because I don't want to change anything here. And nobody on the production team apparently decides that they want to try and mitigate that as well. So it's like, I don't know. I think it's been a common theme for a person that's unhappy to try and change the behaviors of the hundreds that are awful. And I agree that they're awful, but you can't really do that. So you kind of have to just adjust your own circumstance as best as you can.
You're not going to change them. Like, it don't matter how much you preach. It's just the way the internet is. You're wasting your time. It's coming from a good place or not, and whether it's right. And there shouldn't be people saying all this stuff. Like I said, those chats are terrible. Glance at them and your brain's gone. It's ridiculous how many stupid people there are. Just type just shit.
Yeah.
Like, maybe don't look at it. Maybe, I don't know. It's just crazy. And the fact she just blames it all on that she's a woman, like, it's false.
I agree. I do agree with that.
Critiqued because earlier on in the previous shows, you don't know what you're talking about on the topics you're paid to talk about.
Right. Yeah.
That's why a lot. Obviously, there's some people who are like, Olivia Munn's way more attractive, fucking type of way, and clearly there's people like that. But a lot of people have issue with how she's just her facts. They're just all over the place. She has no idea what she's talking about. That's fine, but you're being paid to do it. Like, you've came from the PC side of this esports stuff. Now you're trying to tell me that in 2022, PlayStation has no games. Horizon's round the corner, Gran Turismo 7, God of War. See, like, I can carry on. Xbox owns BioWare. Hogwarts Legacy's gonna Sony away because it's an exclusive to Xbox, and it's not true. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, yeah, and I mean, it gives way to all these different, like you were saying, it gives way to all these other different, like, competitive. Yeah, and I'm curious. I mean, I'm not gonna assume that they really care all that much, but I'm just curious to like what when Sony or Microsoft hear these when they come back. Is there someone that kind of whispers back and it's like, yeah, it's not an Xbox exclusive. As a matter of fact, they actually, when it was teased, they actually had the PlayStation stuff showing. They were showing that. Did somebody like?
You look. Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
You look at the clip of when she's talking about this PlayStation are going to be blown away by Xbox and all this stuff. Look on Adam Sessler's face. The camera literally goes to him, and he's like, you can tell he's like, what's she talking about? But no one says anything.
Yeah.
So is there no discussion on this show? It's just everyone's just applauding one another for talking out their arse.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it kind of. Well, that's the thing too. Like, it's news, and this is me just saying it. So I was familiar with G4 back in the day. I didn't have it myself, but I had a friend and he had it, and so so there'd be an occasion where I would, he would, hey, let's come over, we're gonna check this out. Okay, cool. I'd go over to his place and we'd take a look at things. He's still matter of fact, we're still good friends. He'll come over. He's coming over next weekend, I believe, briefly to do the same thing. We're gonna go through and review some games and do some stuff, and but he had it and we would watch it, and it was, it wasn't my favorite. I always liked the printed medium better. I just felt like that I could kind of glean. There was less, this facial expression, this gesticulation, this kind of other stuff that gets confusing. It was just, I'm reading it as it's written. I can tell what they like. I can tell what I don't think is. I can tell what I think is fluff, and I can tell what I think is, genuine, and I can kind of glean it from there. But nowadays, we have amateur reviewers who, in my opinion, and I say amateur only in the sense that they don't get paid, not in the sense that the content is bad. But we have reviewers that aren't getting paid to do it, who put out reviews that I feel like, hey, they've played this game. If they don't like this game, these are valid critiques. These are you gave a good example of that when you first came on. You were talking about how you didn't like Deathloop, and Deathloop's been all of this. It's been 10 out of 10, like you said, just top of the line. But when I hear that, part of me says, okay, well, how much was the reviewer paid to say this? How much money did Arcane give to them? I'm not saying that Arcane is a studio that would engage in these kinds of activities, but there are studios who have. We know that for a fact. And then you come back on and you're like, hey, I just couldn't get into it. I didn't like it. I'm not a fan of this, then this. And, and I'm sitting there going, oh, yeah, well, that gives me a better insight to when, maybe I shouldn't pick it up. There's a channel that does it. There's your channel, which has done reviews, which I think is fantastic. If I can't find a review on your channel, if I'm looking on other channels for other types of games that, people that I know haven't reviewed, people who I trust haven't reviewed, there's another one that's, I cannot remember the channel, but it's Leave It, Buy It, or Leave It, Rent It, Buy It, something like that. I don't remember anyway. And it's the same thing. It's like, hey, this is a game you should buy when it's $30 instead of $60.
Yeah.
Like, I like that kind of stuff. I don't feel like that back then when G4 was supposed to be news and they were kind of staged up to be a more news-orientated thing and they were news about games, I feel like that there was a higher sense of responsibility because you only got your time slot, your channel, if people owned this specific type of, cable package or satellite package. And you had to give as much information as you could on it, and it had to be within this allotted, with now the internet. And once that particular thing went away, it went away. Now with the internet, like, you really have to compete because there are, even if they're not a million subscriber channel, there are some really good reviews for great games out there, well put together. Like, I don't know if they're going to survive. If their content is staying as it has, I certainly don't think they will. But
I just don't think they will anyway. There's so much competition, and I feel like when YouTube numbers do better than their show, and especially their YouTube channel, it's like, why do you even have a show? You've got it on YouTube anyway. I feel like they're wasting money and extra stuff. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just focusing on a YouTube channel. I know they're also on Twitch, but yeah, I don't really watch that.
It's definitely. The gaming market in general, obviously news, but the gaming market in general is just insanely competitive now, and you're trying to revive, or you're fighting against you're fighting against a well-established. I'll mention this too. Well, I guess this might be prudent to pick up since we're talking about stiff competition, right? If you don't mind, going into the Sony Microsoft fight. You have the well-established Microsoft here, and I'm not saying Sony's not well-established as a company. In fact, they're potentially even better established. But there was a rumor that they are going to be relaunching their subscription services. It's currently under the codename Sparticus. Of course, I'm saying this out loud. Mr. AR is much more familiar with this than even I am, I think, as much research as I do. So I'm saying this for the benefit of those who don't know, who are listening in. But as it stands, although these are two well-respected, well-established companies, Microsoft, I think, yet again, your opinion may differ, but I feel like that Microsoft's Game Pass, Games with Gold membership is just the best membership bang for your buck that's available out there right now. And this is the well-established part of it. It's been out for a good long time. They've moved over to Ultimate. You get free games every month. You get 4 free games, 2 from Xbox One, 2 backwards compatible. The backwards compatible are yours to keep. Even the Xbox 360 backwards compatible ones you get on Game Pass on Ultimate, the gold portion of it, are yours to keep even if the subscription service expires. They're your games permanently, so you're getting no less than 24 games that you can keep even if the subscription service expires. You're getting an additional 24 games that are available to you for free that will expire with the subscription service, but you are getting no fewer than 48 games a year for your subscription service, in addition to getting the Game Pass, where you're getting a library, an instant library. So if you bought nothing but the Game Pass, you have an instant library of games that you can play with no discs. I think that honestly, I mean, there's a lot of hype. Maybe it's overhyped. I personally have very much enjoyed the service. And Sony, I think, is trying to catch up with that, but I don't know what exactly they're doing with it. All of the stuff that I've read is very vague. What do you know about this? What have you seen that maybe I haven't run across yet?
You covered it pretty well. Like, as you said, it's codename Sparticus for whatever reason. And they've also been noted that they've begun delisting their PlayStation Now cards. You know, the cards that you can buy to like be sub to it, which is clear that they're either removing that service or they're rebooting it, as you said. I don't know what they can do to compete against Game Pass, because everyone always says they need to do their AAA games day one, like how Xbox does. But I don't think they can afford it. Like the giant AAA games, I don't think they can afford it the way Microsoft can, because Microsoft have a lot more money.
Yes, absolutely.
By an insane amount. So I feel like they can not necessarily waste, but they can lose money and not make a profit for a while, if that's what's happening with Game Pass. I don't know numbers, but let's say that's what was happening. They can afford to do that, as Sony can't. So I don't know what they can really do. The big rumours, backwards compatibility. Like apparently Mark Cerny, who, you know, he was the architect on the PS5, PS4. He's been around for 40 years, worked on tons of games. Apparently figured out the solution for all the backwards compatibility problems. We could be seeing PS1 games, as well as more PS2, PS3, PS4. I don't think that's enough. I feel like that the nostalgia of that will wear off very fast. Because a lot of people want that, and I agree that's what they want, but I don't think it's enough. I see so many people say, I want backwards compatibility on PS5. I feel like Sony are hearing that, and they're going to use that as the selling point of this Sparticus. Think, well, this is what everyone wants, and I feel like it's going to backfire on them, because everyone's crying out for backwards compatibility, but I think it's going to like wear off very quick, the appeal of it. I don't think old games is enough to compete with Game Pass, especially what's just happened to, which we'll talk about in a bit. I can't see them doing the A1 exclusives, because those games are insane budgets. Just don't think they can. Maybe they will. Maybe it'll be a risk, and maybe I don't know as much as, you know, a lot of other people. Well, I definitely don't, but I just can't see that working out for them. They haven't got that money to, like I said, not waste, but like not make a profit on for a while. So that they can, I feel like Game Pass hasn't made a profit. I don't know if it does now, maybe it does, but it hadn't made a profit for a while. But they're putting so much into it now. They could afford to do that because it's Microsoft. They could just put money, lose money, put more games in it, just constant. It becomes this thing where it's so big that it will make its money back. They can just have more time to do that than Sony would. I just don't think Sony could keep up, so I have no idea what they could do. Have stuff like Crunchyroll, you know, the anime service. You familiar with that?
I vaguely familiar, yes.
They own that, don't they? So I always think they could just put in more value by putting something like that into it too. Obviously, I'm not saying that's going to compete with Game Pass. I'm just trying to think of value that they could put into this service that's not just, hey, here's some PS1 games. I'm one of the people that would love that. I'd love to play Metal Gear Solid on PS5, just the PS1 version with a performance boost. Love to play all these old games, but it's not enough, in my opinion, to keep it going. It'd be enough for the first, like, for a while. You know, everyone loves nostalgia and all that stuff, and it does work. Once Xbox starts showing all these new games and they're all day one, I just don't think they'd be able to keep up if they're just relying on that backwards compatibility, which is the claim. And apparently they're doing something with tiers. There's going to be a tier 1, a tier 2, a tier 3, which I think is a terrible idea. Subscription service, like you shouldn't do that. They need to scrap that, because it's going to the thing too. I don't mean to keep going on. I'll let
No
you
worries.
speak.
No worries.
Thing with this too is this tier thing's just not a good idea, because first off, it's going to split like the consumers up. Tier 3, I don't know, if they put backwards compatibility to a more expensive tier, it's over. It's ridiculous. If they're doing tiers, that needs to be tier 1. It's the backwards compatibility. You've got PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4 all there. Can't be charging extra for that, because you just got to look over at the other side and how much better it looks. All these old games have all got FPS boosts and performance like improvements, and it's just not even close. Like Sony have their exclusives, and I stand by that. I think they have the best exclusives. It's just my opinion. I think the only people that rival them are Nintendo when they bring out a Mario game. I think that's the only thing that rivals Sony's exclusives. So in my opinion, Sony need to focus on that too and just keep doing that, but I don't know how they can put it into their service and still make money. Also, we'll talk about it in a minute. I think Game Pass might be on PlayStation within the next few years. I think that could be a thing. But then I feel like that makes this service irrelevant, like it's pointless. So,
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot there.
No, I completely agree. I didn't hear about the tiers, but yeah, I agree. I mean, tiered subscription services is essentially subscription service the microtransaction, and I'm not a fan of that. So
that is just a rumor, but I'm hearing it a lot, and I'm trying to think what that even would be. And I feel like it's just arrogant Sony, which this happens with every company, you know. They got arrogant after the PS2 success. Xbox got arrogant after the 360 success. It happens with all these companies. And they just think they can do anything, and then it just backfires. And I hope this isn't one of those things where they're like, oh, people will play PS1 games, that's all we need to do, because it won't work. Well, backfire and they'll lose.
That's the other thing though too is if we take a look at the business model that Microsoft has with Game Pass, and I do. I mean, admittedly, I'm retro in title and in what I enjoy the most. So a lot of these games that they did on their backwards compatibility thing, I already had, and I love the fact that I don't have to purchase. Kind of how PS Now did it, where you have to kind of purchase the digital version because the physical machine doesn't run the disc.
Yeah, that too. Like, that's a whole other thing. Like, are they even going to allow you to put a PS1 disc in the PS5? Because that should also be a thing.
Right.
It would just be fantastic for people. All these collectors have got all these PS2, PS1 games. You just put them in and get a performance boost. That'll do so well.
And that's what, like in my case, that was one of the ones that I had done. So when they did this last batch, we talked about it, I think, on our last episode of original Xbox backwards compatibility. They put a bunch of the Star Wars games that I really love on there, including one of my absolute favorites for that console, which was the Jedi Outcast game. And when you put that disc in the original console, it runs, and there are performance issues because the processor can't keep up, and there's a bunch of lag when you're playing in the multiplayer. There's local multiplayer, and there's a lot of lag when you start getting a lot of people on the screen, a lot of things happening. And so you put that same disc into the new Xbox, and that lag goes away completely. The game plays exactly as it would on the original Xbox. It's the same version. It's not the Aspire remade version, and it's just got some quality of life improvements. It's got these fast enough processor to make sure that everything's being processed. It's a little bit more polished and a little bit more colorful than the previous version because it's coming out through HDMI, and yet again, Microsoft isn't making money off of that. When they added that to the backwards compatibility portion of that, the backwards compatibility doesn't make them a dime. If you want to buy one of the backwards compatible titles, you make money. But if you own a disc and you put it in there after the backwards compatible patches come out, you can play that game off of your already owned disc that you bought 20 years ago. And so I had taken a look into it because I was curious the same way, and it was when you were talking about Game Pass being whether or not it's made a profit. Phil Spencer had admitted, and I'm going to go ahead and say that essentially sports.com had made a full article I'm going to quote an excerpt from, which was that Phil Spencer had said that that profit was not the only focus, and admitted that Game Pass was not profitable, but neither was the console itself. And so he just kind of goes on in that article to mention that that's not quite the focus. The profit is not the only focus that they had. And then taking a look at the profits, and I'm using BusinessInsider.com, who made a publication about 5 days ago, who had done that. They stated that with a minimum subscription price of $10 per month, ultimate, of course, is $14.99 a month. It would say that they would be pulling about $250 million every month from the subscription. So they would be positioned to make about $4 billion between now and January 2023. That's not including. That's just how much money they would make in total. That's not including the amount of money that is not profit, because it's being poured right back into their operation in bringing these games. So, and when you look at that number compared to what Microsoft typically would rake in, or what Microsoft is doing, that's really, I mean, $4 billion is a huge amount of money for a lot of people, but for Microsoft, that's actually not a huge number over the course of 5 years. That's not really all that big of a number. So it's or even over the course of a year, that's not that large of a number for Microsoft. So for me, I think the backwards compatibility portion, if they really want to make people happy, if they're winning an audience over, if they are going to do the backwards compatibility portion, it should be, hopefully, if it's a patchable thing, which, noting that Mark Cerny is saying that he figured the issue out and he's the system architect, it tells me it's probably a hardware thing. But if it were able to be distributed as a patch, I believe that it should be absolutely free. Everybody, hey, congratulations, your disc-based PS5 systems can now play PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4, and PS5 games. You would have to do some sort of, I think, damage control to those who bought the digital only if the complaints get to be too big. You know, they're like, oh, I did want to play backwards compatible, but we knew that it was only going to play PS5, maybe PS4, so we got the digital version so we could use our predominantly digital collection. I think there may be a little bit of damage control that would need to go, there. Yeah. And then I think that you would have to make a good portion of your backwards compatible library free to people that were on the tier, that were in the subscription, no tiers. You would need to really heavily leverage your new, and I'm saying this at a loss, really heavily leverage your first and second party support system so that you can have good top tier games coming out that are Returnal. I mean, that's not a brand spanking new game. Can you get that on the docket as one of the first free? Is it going to stack up to Microsoft Game Pass? No. Is it going to give Sony a fighting chance against, fanboys that are coming at them with Microsoft has the best service ever? Yeah, I think it would. That's me personally. Game Pass is in my opinion, they started the battle way too late. I think Game Pass is really robust, and I think this has been my opinion, and this is not me attempting to fanboy out, but even back when it was PS2 versus Xbox, the aforementioned friend that I was talking about, he was a big PS2 advocate. He loved it. I had gotten the Xbox. I was a big Xbox advocate, and we had these kind of battles. I stand by that. I think Microsoft was well ahead of their time with the way that they started doing live and with the way that they started doing their games, even though I love the PS2.
100%, yeah.
So, Sony, I don't think Sony's fighting against, one console generation's worth of forethought. I think they're fighting against 20 plus years of forethought, and they're trying to do it in this one group. They got too comfortable being the top dog with PS2 sales overshadowing Xbox sales. And then when the PS3 came out and things got a little tighter, okay, well, whatever. When PS4 came out, things got a little tighter. And then now we're in this new generation, and it's like we can't even keep up with the console demand. So, I feel like that they've just spent 2 decades getting behind and kind of resting on their laurels, and now it's a little too late to really compete. But that would be what I would want. I'd want immediate patch to backwards compatibility for disc-based. I would want access to backwards compatible games on the site, and you would have to put a very robust library out there to even consider competing. And I think you should take any of the games that you have that you've pretty well made your profits on that are fresh, like Returnal, first party, second party, put those games up there for people to do, what they will with, and then, obviously promote for those who don't get the subscription service that they buy the game. And same situation too. Also offer discounts. It's the same thing that Xbox does. Offer discounts for people that have the subscription service. You were doing that before with the gold thing. Make sure the discounts can rival what Microsoft is doing with their gold discounts. They're doing whatever the sales that they have are, and then if something is on sale and it's happening, and they try to do it so it doesn't coordinate rather. But I don't know what two words I just mashed up into that mess right there. But coordinate. They if something is on sale and then it's a part of the gold pass, then then you get this extra discounted sale, even if it's not that huge of a deal. Like from the original game, you feel like you're getting more out of it. So I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a lot of catch up to play, but I feel like that if they'll at least put those steps into practice, they'll be well on their way to at least giving the fanboys a fighting chance against each other.
I do feel like Sony are almost becoming a bit like Nintendo. It's obviously not as strong they haven't been around as long.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they almost know they can rely on their IP to keep them going,
mm-hmm.
at least for a long time. At least I believe they can. I think a lot of people, that's why they play. I do have a preference. I prefer PlayStation.
Sure.
I'm not a fanboy. I can't stand that shit. I just happen to have preferred their IP since the PS1. I just have. Every generation, I like what they put out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan. I like Xbox. I'm very excited to see what they do now.
Mm-hmm.
What's been going on. I love when Nintendo bring out a Mario or a Donkey Kong, especially those two.
Mm-hmm.
With PlayStation, I do love their IP, and I do think they're really good at new IP. You can joke around all you want how it's always these third-person games. They definitely have a formula right now.
Mm-hmm.
From the purchase that's just happened, they need to change that up a bit, especially with shooters. They have a formula that works for them. As much as they need to branch it out, it works, and I feel like they might get a bit arrogant with we've got our IP, we haven't really got to do much. Here's tier 1, 2. That tier thing is just the worst thing I've heard about this service so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like it's just an arrogance thing again, and they need to not even launch that.
Mm-hmm.
Someone needs to be telling them this is a bad idea for tiers. Just give them examples of that they clearly know about Game Pass. Obviously, that everyone knows about everything with these companies. I just really struggle to see what they're gonna have for the value of it to compete. Your idea of your exclusives that are a bit older now, or a few months back, that's a really good idea to put them in right away. I didn't even think of that, like Returnal, Demon's Souls, Ratchet & Clank, Rift Apart, Sackboy. You got a Kenna, just stuff they could just put on right away. That's a lot of value there. Just once it dries up, what are they going to do then?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to put the next God of War day one, or is that going to be too much of a loss for them? They can throw the old God of War on, and that's that's great. That's a really good launching point, what you said about putting their older games that aren't day one on. I don't think they'll be able to keep that up.
Well, and that's the thing too, is with those games, the reason I was thinking about it is I know that the window to make the profits on these are really small windows. Unless it's a really big AAA blockbuster title, they're not measuring that make over the course of the year like most people would. They will have a measurement of how it's sold over the course of a year, because that's how they have to do it from a fiscal perspective, right? But when it comes to how they have to measure it from a sales success, or they want to make their ROI back in, I'm gonna be hypothetical and say 3 months. They want, because that's when it's going to be the hottest. That's when it's going to be the most likely to sell. And so their thing is that they put this game out that they've developed. They know how much money they have. They know how much money they've spent in copies sold. They know, these guys are businessmen. They know what they're doing. They know how much they need to sell in order to hit their threshold, in order to hit how much the markup needs to be. So, that's my thing is you know after 3 to 5 months, you know whether that game was a success or not. You probably know after 2 months. So once that's done and you know whether it's been a success or a flop, even if it doesn't really to me make a difference which side it comes on, then put it out there. If it was a flop, put it out there, and you'll make money on the recurring membership. Don't put it out there and you're not going to make money because it's just going to sit on the shelf. If it's a flop, it's probably not going to sell a ton of copies out there. So you're really but if you put it on a list of something else, then you could say, oh, it's contributing to, and maybe no one will play it, but at least it's contributing to, this subscription service, which is a gateway to other games that people may enjoy, which is a gateway to you making a monthly profit because of the subscription service. I would love for them to be able to make, they won't do it quickly enough because it's right around the corner, but I would love for them to make enough money that they felt confident putting Ragnarok out day one. I think that would be, or if they wanted to take that risk and put Ragnarok out day one, Sparticus launches, whatever its actual name is, it comes out, and then you get, and I feel like they're going to announce it during, June, the normal E3 type stuff, but assume that Ragnarok comes out this March to mark the 3-4 years since it's come out, March of 2018 or whatever it was. They put it out day one. That's a huge pull. Okay, instead of spending $60, I can spend $15. How many people? And this we learned this with subscription-based services for a long time. How many people are going to just cancel their subscription after they finish God of War? It's not a lot of people. We see that, like, I have subscriptions that I don't even remember. I had subscriptions I didn't even remember having, because I'm like, and there are actually applications on your phone to help you manage subscription services so that you can remember to get rid of ones you don't use. But like, once you've gotten somebody on there, if you put Ragnarok up there, and let's say you make it the same price as Xbox, $14.99 a month, they get all the backwards compatibility, they get the complete backwards compatible library, what PS1 through we'll say 3 with some 4, because obviously you're still dual launching PS5 4 games, and you have that whole library out there. And then you have a couple of PS4 on there, you have a couple of PS5, recent titles that are out there, and then you decide to just go ahead and drop the bombshell. Ragnarok's available day one for anyone who has this $15 a month pass. I honestly think that if you bring in enough people from that, I don't think you're going to have 5%, if even, cancel their subscription once they're done with Ragnarok. I think that you're going to have everybody moving and going through that thing, and then you've got them where you want them. So now you just have to keep it good. All you have to do is keep putting, new games out there. Ragnarok disappears for a while like Netflix, then it comes back in 5-6 months after people have had their opportunity to buy the disc copy, and whatever the case is. Will it potentially stifle your launch sale, when you can play it for $14.99 versus $70 or $60? Probably. But that risk will get people into that, and then now your games that you're launching, you don't have to be putting them on there fresh. People have a plethora of things they can play. They have new games they can play. That would be how I would do it, and that's only in the event that I am playing catch up, which like I said, I see them doing. So
my worry too is that I do believe they're currently arrogant Sony, and I think they're going to charge more than like Game Pass, like by a bit. They feel like they can. I sort of worry what again, I don't mean to keep repeating myself, but I want to know what these tiers are, and what differentiates tier 1 from 3. And if that's backwards compatibility, that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
What do you even get in tier 1? Like, what you get Sackboy at, like, I love that game, but it's not comparable. It's not going to work. Like, I really think they're going to rely on backwards compatibility. And I do think that plays into a lot of fans, though, because they've been dying for that stuff. That's all I ever hear. They want to play, and I get it. Like, it's nostalgic. It works. Like, they announced that like the Resistance trilogy is going to be on this service, and it's a 60 FPS boost. I'll love that. Like, I get it, and I'll play them and I'll enjoy it. But it needs to be more than that. You can't rely on just old games, because you got a limit there. No matter how many good IP you've got since the PS1, you've got a limit to what you can add. It'll eventually dry up. I'm really interested to see what they do.
Well, and well, I guess I asked a question. You said the tier. I mean, I agree with you. What do you think? So, assuming tiers, do you assume there are going to be 3 tiers and 5 tiers? And what
But
do you?
heard there's 3. But like I said, this isn't confirmed, but I've heard it a lot. It's not like just from one person.
Okay. Well, it's assuming that there are 3 tiers. What do you anticipate the lowest tier and the highest tier will cost? Because you said you believe it's going to be different by quite a bit. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts on that are.
I don't know specifics. I just feel like how PlayStation are right now. Like they charge $70 now for their games, don't they? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they're not above going a bit greedier, and it works. Like some of these games, like Outriders as an example. I don't know if you even remember that game. It came out last year. It's a third-person shooter.
Yes, I know.
That sold more on PlayStation than it did on Game Pass, and it came day one on Game Pass. I feel like that's bad for PlayStation to see, because they're like, oh, people will buy it anyway. It sold better on the PlayStation. Like, I don't think that was a $70 game, by the way. That's kind of a bad example. What I mean is these games are selling, some of them, better on just as their own over PlayStation than they are on Game Pass. So I feel like that makes Sony get arrogant about, we can charge whatever we want and we'll do the same with this service. It's like $5-10 more than Game Pass, but they think people will buy it, and I do think some people will. I do think they've almost given this Nintendo effect where it doesn't really matter. We've got this loyal fan base now that'll buy anything.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and I was going to say too, I like that you pulled that example too, because that's one of those other games that I feel like that a lot of noise went around, and I know only of it by name. That's all I knew, and I felt bad when you said
Outriders that you're talking about.
Yes, Outriders.
I tried the beta and I didn't enjoy it, man. But I think it sold pretty well, but I don't know.
I mean, that's the thing. It sounds. I feel like that people are going to listen to this and be like, "This guy does not play games." I promise you, I play a ton of games. It's just, I want to say something. I know this isn't on topic. This is probably another unpopular opinion, but I really do have this. I just feel like that games have become generally, and I don't mean every game out there. Obviously, there are several great games out there, but on the whole, or in the majority for me. I think that games have just become generally less interesting than they used to be. Not because I'm less interested in gaming, but because it feels like a lot of them to me have become a rinse and repeat of something else that came out that had probably done it better. Like there are games like Elden Ring seems awesome. So like even though that may be a rinse and repeat, I feel like that they're changing a lot of it, and so. But there's a lot of, like, it's just a lot of, we get another Call of Duty, we get another Battlefield, we're going to eventually get another Assassin's Creed, but then when we come into, like, a lot of it just feels like a lot of, like, I find myself, when it comes to newer games, just kind of retreating to these, like, indie retro style games, because I feel like that they restrict themselves in terms of resources, and then they have to focus on making it good, or at least better, because of the restrictions they've given themselves graphically and otherwise. I feel like they have to focus on quality over the quantity. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but like I play games all the time, and I find myself constantly retreating back to retro because it's like I didn't enjoy it. But I'll play Bloodstained Ritual of the Moon because it's this retro style, even though it's a newer game. But then when it comes to like these other ones, I'm like I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong with that.
As someone who's like, I'm very up to date with all the new games and what's going on, you're not wrong. You're right. The old games are better. They just are. Not all of them. Like sit here and talk about how good God of War is. I mean, it's a reboot of an old game. Bad example, but some great new games out there. But it's just, to me as well, I agree with you. Indie games and these retro-inspired games are just more interesting, and a lot of people just look at them with one opinion that they're all the same, which I find funny, but they don't do it with nowadays games.
That's true.
People will look at a Cyber Shadow and be like, "Oh, it's just the same platformer," but then they'll go and play fucking the 60th shooter this year. It's just the same. What's the difference? There's more creativity with indies. Not every indie, and this is my favourite genre. Not every indie game is this retro platformer. Some really creative stuff, and those are amazing too. Like I said, it's my favourite genre. there's some really creative stuff in indies, and you're right, they are more interesting and less samey. They really are. Like, from just face value looking in, and you do see two platformers. I understand when people like it's the same game. Like, that's what we see too when we look at these two open world games. That just the only difference is the character. Like, it's the same thing. It's just weird. It's way more creativity with indies.
Well, and then yet again, I mean, maybe I'm giving more credit to indie game, but like that's Hades, right? So like you said, Cyber Shadow, Bloodstained, and yet again, you could say Ritual of the Night, but we can go back to the Curse of the Moon. They did 2 Curse of the Moons, both of which, in my opinion, are pretty good. The first one a little bit better in yet again my opinion than the second one, but both of them good. These, you know, and I know Hades isn't you know necessarily retro, but it's this isometric. Well, it is kind of, honestly. It's very, it hails back to The Immortal. For anybody who played that, that was a NES game that came to actually Sega Genesis, and the Sega Genesis version is, in my opinion, quite a bit better. But it's this isometric adventure game, and yes, the controls are smoother and a little bit better than the Immortal would be, but it's not that they're completely unique and that they've never been done. It's that I feel like that the limitations imposed upon them by the developer, saying, look, I don't want to make this game 120, work only on 144 hertz monitor, 120 frames are the minimum, and all the colors of the spectrum, for someone who, so I want people to see colors that can't be seen by anyone but a tetrachromat, those types of things. I feel like when they stop trying to pretty things up and they just focus on the core mechanic of the game and say, look, we're going to go with this art style. Like I said, we've picked on Hades a couple times. Like, you get something that's genuinely fun or enjoyable, or at least it's pure enough for you to discern whether or not you like it or not. I don't know. I just find myself gravitating a lot more towards that. And yet again, I grew up with, Pitfall on the Atari, and I grew up with, NES and Pong and all this other stuff. So maybe I'm biased in that direction, but it's just one of those that I like. Resident Evil was kind of an anomaly. I know God of War Ragnarok will be one of those. Elden Ring will be one of those. And then there will be 130 games that will launch this year again, and I will care about maybe another 5 that I haven't just mentioned, probably. And then I'll go back and pop Felix the Cat in my toaster NES and play it, and that'll be the year for me. So
there's always exceptions. Like I said, I'm really excited for the new Horizon game. That's a big open world game. There's always these exceptions. It's just, I do feel a lot of AAA are so focused on detail, they're just forgetting every aspect of the actual game, and when you're playing the game, which is still the most important thing. I don't care how detailed your grass is in your game. I don't care if it's not fun to play. I want to play the game. I don't care. Like, to me, visual, like, I said, the realism part of games, because they always try and go realistic now, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That stuff wears off so fast.
Yes, it does.
And I can look at a God of War and be like, this looks amazing, but then I want to play the game and see the combat, and I'm not going to sit there and stare at the snow for 20 minutes. I've just looked at it for a second. I'm like, oh, this looks nice. And then that's it. It's my limit with visuals. I prefer a more unique art style than a realistic one. Like, for example, something like Borderlands is going to hold up more in 30 years' time than The Last of Us in terms of visuals.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I love both those games, but his obsession with realism is just ridiculous with AAA now, and they're getting bigger too. These worlds, that's another issue. They're just gigantic. Not enough stuff in them.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, that's even still, like, imagine that they populate the world in its entirety. It's not far before we end up realizing the same limitations we have and saying, oh, well, do I want to virtually walk down the block to buy some milk, or do I want to just really do it so I actually have milk when I'm done with it? That kind of thing. Yeah. So, I do have to. I know we've been on this topic for a little bit, so we have a couple of more topics to go. I think this episode's probably going to run a little long, looking at the time on it. So
I realized that a while ago.
Yeah, no, and I'm happy to do it. But so for anybody who's watching at this point, we're normally done around the 2 hour, two hour and a quarter mark. This episode will run a little bit long. We're just catching up. There's been a long time since the last episode of this one, so we're just catching up on topics and making sure we get everything. So our apologies if you do decide you want to watch this in pieces. Please do so.
Don't watch this all the way through.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to watch it all, yeah. If you've got 4 hours and we got this. I will try to break it up when we do the upload. I'll try to break it up to the topic so people can kind of easily find their way. That's a good idea. Yeah. But we were talking about the just behemoth nature of Microsoft, especially with its Game Pass and such. And they just announced, not very long ago, they just announced a gigantic attempt acquisition. They're working on. They're trying to acquire Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion. So almost $70 billion into this. Now, Activision, I think, was the first third-party developer. It's the first one I know about. This is a huge company. And then Blizzard, when they came along, especially with things like World of Warcraft and the Diablo, they just amassed a huge thing. So a $70 billion acquisition, provided that everything goes through as it's meant to, and I feel like it probably will. What is that? I mean, what is that going to mean for Microsoft, who already, by the way, has exclusivity with Bethesda, and just they're buying these huge companies, and they've announced also that with these that they're bringing a lot of those games, if they've not already, to Game Pass, so that immediately upon the finish acquisition, you're going to be able to play a ton of these games on your Microsoft enabled system, be that the PC or be that your Xbox console, provided that it can run whatever is being run. And they did announce, like, Diablo, I think was Diablo 2, the remastered one was, I think, on that announcement. Like, what is that? What do you think about this? Are you excited about this, or are you just kind of like, PlayStation can't buy Activision now kind of thing?
I actually don't want any of these companies to buy any of these companies that are this big. I think it's kind of bad overall for the games industry. I don't know what to make of it. I've been so 50-50 on it since it happened, and I don't necessarily think it's good, but I've been reading into it, and the fact that it came out that Activision was actually looking to be bought. They asked Microsoft. It wasn't the other way around.
Okay.
Which I didn't know at first, but I think it's going to be better overall for Activision and Blizzard, because if you know what's going on with them, there's a whole shitstorm of just craziness that happens with those companies right now. I think under Microsoft it could probably be cleared out a little bit, and in the long run it's probably better for them. My knee-jerk reaction is that it's just, I don't want these companies having these purchase wars, then everybody's just under the two companies. Like, third party just doesn't exist anymore. Sure, yeah. They've some insane IP that they've got from this. It's insane how much stuff they've got. Crash Bandicoot, like, as a long-term PlayStation fan, that's just weird to see. I know, that is. It's not a weird fanboy thing. It's just seeing Crash on like he's been on Xbox before and hasn't been owned by PlayStation or Sony for a long time now. He's like, to me, he's so connected to Sony. He was the mascot of PS1. He was like the best seller on PS1, I think, maybe besides Gran Turismo. It's weird that he's like now on Xbox. It's just weird to see, but like, in terms of just like looking at it as games, I have no issue. Actually, I'm excited, just being a big Crash fan. They'll probably be able to work on a new Crash game now, because there's so many companies at Activision that were just stuck on Call of Duty for ages. I'm hoping this kind of manages to change that up. That's the good thing I see of it. I am worried that it's just going to keep going to purchases till no one's left. Well, and just to the mascot thing, Spyro too, yeah? Spyro too, yeah. So that's insane. Like, that's going to be... Like, Xbox have basically now got this... They had a big hole in the first party lineup. Because these, like, family-friendly characters. They had Banjo, but I sometimes think they forget he exists. Because what are they doing with him? someone needs to work on that IP. I know they've got Psychonauts. Like, I feel like this fills a hole for them that they didn't have. Family-friendly, kind of colourful character kind of thing. Got a bunch of those now, and they've literally got, besides EA's games, they're the home for first-person shooters now.
Yeah, that's true.
They own
too.
everything: Call of Duty, Doom, Wolfenstein, Quake. I'm forgetting stuff. I know I am. It's like insane what they own.
It's well, and I'm gonna add to the insanity though. This is gonna be kind of this is almost the uncanny valley between them having all of these digital properties. But does it make you feel any different knowing that this near $70 billion acquisition is an all-cash acquisition?
Really?
Yes, that it was not a negotiated on profits deal. It is a $69 billion, $70 billion cash deal. So it's not we're going to be paying on this for a while. They are there are some concerns apparently, and yet again I don't know who all to cite. I know that one of the sites was PC Gamer, who was concerned. They decided to ask a lawyer, and they believe that this particular attorney believed that there may be some issues gaining regulatory approval because of how gigantic, I guess, that the company is, and how gigantic this acquisition is, so as to avoid the monopoly. But this is an all-cash acquisition. If they have it, it's going to be huge. I mean, it's a big deal.
Just think of the Bethesda one, which was also huge, and it's nothing compared to this.
Oh no, it's just
that was $7 billion. Bethesda's.
Well, and that's where it gets difficult too. I mean, I agree with you. I like the idea of third party. I understand if Activision is looking to be sold because they're running into whatever troubles they may have, and that's their bailout. I get that. But at the same time, that's just there. You know what? What I do hope that happens from this is, like I said, I agree with you. I don't like the idea of these third-party developers being bought out by, console makers and such. I think that because you get these exclusives, and those exclusives mean you have to buy a whole console in order to own one game that you like, and so on and so forth. Yeah. What I do hope that will do, personally, is inspire Sony and Nintendo too, to go back to their roots of when consoles were not as popular as they are now, and they weren't the dominant forces in the console world. And of course, Nintendo's kind of almost always been the dominant force in the console world. I mean, it really, when it came out, it never really was competing with the Intellivision, and it was never really a competition. But PlayStation had to kind of fight to become more dominant than Nintendo after their deal didn't go well back in the PS1 era. So I would love for those teams, Nintendo and such, to go, and I'd love Microsoft not to rest on their laurels either, but it doesn't seem that they are, at least this far. I would love for them to go back and say, okay, we now don't own the majority of these games, we don't have all of these, we need to develop some IPs that are marketable and treated almost as if they're trying to look for a mascot, like they did with Crash and Spyro, you know.
So, especially for Sony with shooters, shooters are huge. They now have zero. It's I feel like they weren't bringing back their shooters because they had Call of Duty. And there's been a whole thing now where Phil Spencer, who runs Xbox, he said that they still plan on keeping Call of Duty on PlayStation. Now, they have a desire to keep it on. It was very specific phrasing. That could mean anything. That could mean it's on until the deal's done, so we could get Call of Duty this year and then it's gone. Could mean that Warzone, which is the free-to-play battle royale, that stays, which I think will happen. Could mean that they're discussing some kind of Game Pass thing. Or Sony still technically has, because that makes Sony an insane amount of money. Call of Duty is huge. Look, I know people like to shit on the franchise, whatever. That game is insane how big it is. That is a huge, out to Sony if that's gone.
Oh, yeah.
That is a huge chunk of money that's just vanished. So, whatever this Call of Duty deal staying on there is, I still think they need to focus on making new IP, like you said. Because Sony can do that. They can, it doesn't matter if you like their games or what. like the PS4 had so many new IP that did incredibly well, like just Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon, just to name two.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Bloodborne, there's a ton of them. They've got old shooters, like they can bring back Resistance, which I think would be a very smart move, because I think that's one of the most unique settings in a shooter. I like Killzone. I think Guerrilla are used better on Horizon. I think they're better at that. No, I like Killzone, because that was their game before Horizon. I would like to see them bring Resistance back. Salcom, they also own that, which was a big shooter back in the day. They've got these games that if one of those isn't in the works, then I think they're just clueless and they don't know what's going on. One of those has to be made, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree.
Even just get variety anyway, not even just as a reaction to this. Sony needs a bit more variety. Like I said, there's that formula where it's just all third person. They do that. They do it well, but it's the same formula. They have stuff in the works, like they're working with Deviation Games. Funnily enough, are Call of Duty veterans. They're working on a exclusive FPS for Sony. We've got Jade Raymond, who worked on Assassin's Creed. She's doing a multiplayer game for Sony. And Naughty Dog are doing their, I think it's a Last of Us multiplayer. It's going to be a huge AAA. So that's the thing I think they need to focus on too, even though I'm more of a single player fan. They need that multiplayer stuff, especially now Call of Duty might be going away. But I think they've got things that would come up and take that spot. Probably not to the level that Call is at. I do think they need to wake up a bit and, like you said, just focus on more new IP. So I feel like that's how Nintendo survive, really. I mean, I make the joke that Nintendo have 4 IP that they just rinse and repeat in Mario, Pokemon, Zelda, and what am I forgetting here? Animal Crossing was the other one, I think. But yes, Donkey Kong too. So okay, 5. And they've had new stuff, haven't they? Like Splatoon and all this stuff, and they're relied on by their IP. Like people play Nintendo for their exclusives. At least that's what I feel. Now the Switch is like a big deal because of its handheld stuff and all that. For me, I go to Nintendo because of Mario. That will bring me there. I think Sony can do that too. Like they've got God of War and they've got these games that they're also putting on PC now. It's another big lump of money that they're getting from another source. They've invested in Nixxes, which are a PC porting studio. So I don't think they're as clueless as they sometimes seem. I think they're aware. And they're doing little things to probably help in the long run, like porting more to PC. Just it's more accessible. You get people. Obviously, not everyone's going to buy a new console. If some guy's playing God of War on his PC and he loves it that much, he'll get a console to play Ragnarok. There are people like that can't wait. But and I think stuff like that works for PC kind of stuff. But I think it's just another line of money that they can have. But I do think you're right that they need to just rely on even old IP. Like they can't now. They can't even bring like Crash back or like Spyro. They need to work on just more new games and getting more value, which would then add to this subscription service too. You got more stuff to put in that, it's more valuable. People will come and check it out.
Sure, yeah. Well, and that was that. Me personally, I also think that they should really work on developing. Granted, like I said, it's not me trying to focus on the even the specific genre, which I do agree with you. If they want to have the full gamut of versatility, they would want to do that. But what I would think would be interesting to see would be for them to strengthen partnerships that they have with other developers. While, like, I agree, I think that I would love to see them bring back some of the nostalgic, like when the PlayStation 1 came out. Obviously, they had to develop a sense of identity, and so that's where we get the Crash and the Spyro. We got Tomb Raider at that time, which is its kind of own thing now. But and then PS2 was just shovelware and great. They just threw so many games, and just so happened a lot of them stuck. But I think that. And PS3 came out, and then they decided to do something else. And they tried like Heavenly Sword, and they tried Lair, which were both interesting. I think that they would do well to try and stick to that. But then I also think it would be a good idea for them to try and get develop a stronger partnership with some of these other, more seasoned people who are focused on kind of a unilateral version of gaming, right? So, for example, what if they were to strengthen their relationship with Ubisoft? What if they were able to get the new Splinter Cell that's been announced finally, or the reboot of the first Splinter Cell rather, as an exclusive on their console, a timed exclusive? What if they were able to develop games with one of the PS1 things that I really loved was Rainbow Six. Rainbow Six, yet again, still owned by Ubisoft. Or if they wanted to delve into an older franchise that's kind of been deserted, in my opinion, Medal of Honor was great. Way back in the day. Now, Warfighter was a little wonky, but yeah, the old Medal of Honor, Rising Sun, all of that was great. Why not go back and revisit some of those and get those as timed exclusives and buy yourself a couple of years to get your own stuff, your own IPs, and then while you're doing that, your development team could be working on. Because I loved Killzone as well. I thought Killzone was great. As a matter of fact, in the retro room here, I have a Helgast or the Helgen helmet. Cool. I love Killzone, but Killzone was great. Resistance, like you said, same situation. Resistance was really great. Same situation. Ironically, around that Helgast helmet, I have one of the teeth, the tooth necklace from Resistance. From Resistance 3. Yeah. So I excuse me. I think that it would be. I think it'd be great for them to do that, but they need to buy themselves time right now. And I think the best way for them to do that is to strengthen partnerships with companies that they, used to work with a lot more closely. And Ubisoft is one of those. I think Medal of Honor was owned by EA, so Electronic Arts would be one to strengthen a relationship if you could. That's going to be tough because Microsoft has a pretty strong bond with EA, considering their EA Play is being a part of the past now.
Ubisoft too. They're it's the service they have that's been going to be put on Game Pass too, or something like that.
Well, and it's gonna the Uplay.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Microsoft did a great job to try to dig its claws in early and in the right places. I think they strategically have been very, very intelligent about how they're doing business. But
they know what they're doing.
Huh?
Know exactly what they're doing. They're not like idiots, Microsoft.
Oh yeah, no, they are. They picked it up very, very well. But at the same time, this goes into the you have to spend money to make money piece of things, where it's no longer Microsoft having a strong relationship with some of these companies. It is Microsoft owning these companies. And Sony is going to have to realize that they're going to have to spill some money to get timed exclusives like they did with Deathloop. Now, granted, that was a move, but when you need heavy hitters, you need names that are immediately recognizable. Deathloop was a gamble. It could have been good, it could have been bad. Luckily, people thought it was good review wise, but at the same time, you got to start pulling. I think they need to start pulling franchises that are well known, that they can pull out there and start developing those relationships. And I mean a monetary development. That may mean a monetary development of relationship. We are going to offer you exclusive monies to be on our console for a year and a half, 18 months. And then, do what you can. Make your money, do what you have to. I mean, the problem is, like you said, that with Sony waiting and kind of resting on their laurels for as long as they have, there's a good chance that Sony's too far behind to catch up with Microsoft.
Another thing that plays into it too is Sony has system sellers, but right now they don't have the system to sell.
It's true. That's very true.
What I mean? That's a big issue. Like Horizon, God of War, Gran Turismo 7, these would sell PS5s, and there's a reason why they're also on PS4. Like, they're not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
No, they can't sell PS5s right now. I knew they haven't been able to for a while, which is why there's these previous gen versions.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be a train wreck. PS5 owners would buy them. It just wouldn't be as much. And no, you're right about everything. It's just definitely need to do what you said about, which I do think they do when make these deals, these like exclusively timed deals.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard them say that they want Final Fantasy to be the home of PlayStation this gen, which I think is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think besides the action game coming out, Strangers of Paradise,
mm-hmm.
I think every Final Fantasy game this gen will be only on PlayStation. I think they would be smart to because they can't go in a bidding war with Microsoft because they'll lose like day one.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't do it. It would be stupid. So, like individual not purchases, but deals.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of buying Konami, buy the rights for Silent Hill exclusive, and for a Castlevania exclusive, a Metal Gear exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Do that rather than buy the whole company.
Yeah.
And the worry is, do Microsoft come in and just buy Konami before they get the chance? Because they could do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's rumours that they'll buy EA and Ubisoft, but I feel like you said there's concerns with the whole monopoly thing. I don't think they're going to do that because it's just going to look insane.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're going to make another big purchase? If it's something crazy like Sega or I don't know. I do agree with you how they need to focus on individual things rather than buying all these publishers.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't think that's good on either end, really.
I say you mentioned Sega there. I just as a side note, this is not one of the topics, but I honestly, if Sega had to be bought, I would like Nintendo to buy them.
That'd be cool. It'd be weird. Old rivals.
Well, there was and I'll give my reason here in just a second. But I would love Sega to have enough money to just make another console. Honestly, I'd love to see just another console break up the big three.
Agree.
But I get it. Sega's not at the present able to do that. But yeah, I think I said this on yet again a previous episode, but I'll go ahead and re-say it just because it was such a story that the way that it was conveyed to me, and it was back, of course, when Satoru Iwata was still alive, and it was that the Aliens Colonial Marine game, I think 2012, 2013, something around that time frame. It may have been even earlier. My time is all kinds of messed up. But anyway, that game was an absolute bomb. It was very poorly developed and very poorly handled. And the reason being is because Sega gave a pretty decent chunk of money to, I think it was Gearbox Studios.
Correct.
And of course, Gearbox makes great games. I'm no fan of Randy Pitchford. They're out of my own state, and I wouldn't spit in their direction, or his direction rather. But Gearbox on the whole, I don't think is as dubious. And anyway, apparently they spent a bulk of the money that they were given for Aliens Colonial Marine into their next installation of Borderlands, which I think at the time was the second Borderlands.
It was two.
It was two, yeah, okay. And then they took the remaining monies and they used that to pay several outsourced companies. I mean, if you take a look at the game, when the logos are showing how many people were involved, it's almost like its own credits sequence, like the long credit sequence you get at the end of the game. You get that at the beginning of the game, except for it's all of the companies. Then at the end, you get all the companies and the names of the people that did it. And it's very slapdash. It's very put together in a very poor, non-cohesive manner. And so anyway, they attempted to, because the game completely flopped, sue, and because of some of the verbiage that was used, they did not win the lawsuit, and so they were going to go bankrupt. And apparently Iwata made a deal and said, if you make the next 3 Sonic games for our console exclusively, we'll just give you this bailout money, basically. And so that deal was struck. Sega was able to do that. That's where I think Sonic Boom came, and sadly that's not a great game either, but yeah, that's where those guys... There's Sonic Boom, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, which I believe is the 3DS, and then there's the other Sonic, which I cannot remember. I have it. It's here. I just can't read the spine from where I am. But the other one, that actually is, in my opinion, a decent game. That's actually a pretty good game. So one against the Sinister Six or something like that. But anyway, my whole point in going off on that is there's that's a kind of nice relationship there, at least in that one story. So if Sega had to be bought, I think I'd feel like it was kind of going home to Nintendo, whereas the other companies I'd be a little disappointed.
It's kind of how I feel with when I reference Silent Hill and Metal Gear Solid. I think they just make sense.
Mm-hmm.
These deals that go back to PlayStation, at least for me, that's what I associate them with, especially Metal Gear Solid.
Mm-hmm.
found my original copy of that game the other day, and it has a Silent Hill demo disc in there. It came with it.
That's cool.
Like they're connected to the PlayStation for me, so I do think that was actually happening, especially Silent Hill. I don't think it's wise to start buying publishers, and like Sony could afford Konami or Capcom or Square Enix. I think Square Enix could actually happen, but I think that's been a thing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that'll be a response to Microsoft. Yeah, I do agree with you that they need to do individual. They're really good at building relationships and then buying that team years later.
Mm-hmm.
PlayStation have done that since the beginning. Like Insomniac and Housemarque and Bluepoint are like the latest examples. They've worked with those companies for years, and then they buy them after how many games. I feel like that's going to stop because of what Microsoft are doing now. They're just buying instantly. Like, we'll take these. And Sony, like, they can't build a relationship up because Microsoft come over and offer 10 times the amount. Like, as looking at the business and the company, why wouldn't you say no?
Oh yeah.
Or why wouldn't you say yes? Sorry. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I don't even feel like that. I mean, I agree that that's probably a thing that happens, but I don't even think that Microsoft is being, offering. Oh, hey, I'm going to offer you 10 times the money. I think that they're just.
Oh no, yeah.
I think that they've just been smart about. I mean, they could absolutely do that, and I agree with you. But I also think that
I don't want it to come to that where they're just having this bidding war and just all these companies are just under the two. Mm-hmm. You got Nintendo off in the corner doing their own thing, and there's no third party anymore.
True, yeah. Well, so I'm just thinking to like I said, I'm thinking that they just, as far as their business tack has gone, they've just done such a really impressive job with who they went and made the relationships with, and what their timing in that. And so, like you said, EA and Ubisoft,
incredible.
Yeah. So I mean,
perfect timing.
These are some really sharp businessmen and women. I just, kudos to them. But I agree, I don't want it all to be enveloped.
I'll say one more thing, that I am glad, if anything, that it's Microsoft and not like a Facebook or an Amazon.
Oh yes.
They're buying Activision. Do you know what I mean? I'm glad it's this company that are very focused on games, because I feel like Amazon and Facebook want to get into that, but I'm definitely glad it's Microsoft and not those.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Well, and we said the same thing, right? We said we said that the article that I was reading was saying that the focus wasn't necessarily purely profit. And I know that's a thing that you say when you're a business who doesn't want people to think you're greedy, but it goes back to the old adage of actions speak louder than words. And I have, when I turn on my Xbox console for $15 a month, I have 24 new games that I get to keep no matter what for the year. I get 24 games in addition to that I get to keep contingent on the subscription. I have 233 games that I can go and jump into Game Pass, which are cycling in the Netflix fashion, so I can play new games. I have an instant collection. It does feel like that they are taking a loss on the whole on this. Maybe they're not. Maybe I don't have enough understanding of how the finances work, but it does feel like that the company, at least the division that is working on Xbox, is actually passionate about getting their people to continuously buy, if nothing else, and therefore are making it the most attractive prospect they can for the consumer. And yeah, maybe it's a business practice, but at the same time, it's a good business practice, and I'm not against it. So, but that's just me. That having been said, one of the things that kind of I feel like it wasn't as big. All this other stuff that's happening, these coverages of these companies being bought out. I feel like that the Game Awards announcements from last year was, at least for me, almost entirely overshadowed. Like, usually when it happens, the world kind of stops where I am and I hear all this other stuff. And in this case, I didn't hear that, but then the things that I heard, that the few things that had peppered in to my news feeds and respective channels were really exciting. So I am curious, what did you think of the GAA 2021, and what did you think of is there anything you're super excited about, or what are you most excited for concerning that?
There are a few things. It's all I watched the show for, by the way, are the announcements. Like,
Yeah, sure.
the show has turned into just a whole big advertisement of just nothing. When the trailers show up, that's what's like worth the watch. The big one for me was Alan Wake 2.
Okay.
Like, I remember when it came on, it was one of the, like, I don't really react much. You know how you see these, I know some of them are fake, but I know a lot of them are genuine. People like get really hyped, don't they? And every time I see a trailer, I'm like, oh, that look cool. I actually reacted to this one because this is a big deal for me, the Alan Wake 2. I'm a huge fan of the first game. Just when I kind of recognised his voice, I was like, that's Alan Wake. And when it showed him, I was like, holy shit, it's actually happening. It's not happening until 2023, but I guess we're closer now than we were. And the most exciting thing for this for me is Sam Lake, who's like, I think he's the lead writer of Remedy. He writes all the games, and he's the face of Max Payne.
Okay.
Like the actual face model and stuff. He said this is going to be their first ever survival horror game. You know, I'm a huge horror fan, so I'm really excited that they're leaning on the horror, because Alan Wake is more of a thriller. It's like, it's not a horror game. It's just not. It's like psychological, isn't it? The fact that they're leaning into the horror of it makes me really excited, and that was definitely my highlight. I'm just scrolling here real quick because there was a lot of stuff shown, wasn't there? So I'm trying to gloss over a few. Leave that one for you that I've just saw.
I think I know which one that one is. Yeah.
Elden Ring had a cool trailer. I'm looking forward to that. Moon had a game that was just to see. That's a thing as well. There were a lot of CG trailers. Always disappoint me, but even though I'm sitting here happy about Alan Wake, there was no gameplay shown. Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. That looked really cool. Did you have a chance to see the trailer for that? The gameplay one?
I did see that. That was actually pretty nice. I'm pretty excited about that.
Got a lot of Sunset Overdrive vibes from that. It's a game I love. The movement and the way they were using, like, I think Harley was using this grapple hook and stuff.
Yeah.
Fun. There's one I don't agree with a lot of people on. Hellblade 2 was shown. And people lost their shit over this, how good it looked. And yes, visually it looks incredible. At the same time, like I said earlier, I like to play games. It was boring. She was just slowly walking, then slowly picking up a spear, and it's just, I can't deal with games like that. Like, I get that it's this trailer hyping up how it even says cinematic gameplay, so you know what they're going for. It's supposed to look like you're just watching it, but it just doesn't do anything for me. Visually it looks incredible. Like I said, visuals wear off for me within like 5 seconds. So, I want to see the gameplay and the minute to minute of this game. I think the first one's really unique. I don't know if you've played it, but how they used multiple voices when you got headphones on and stuff. It's a really unique concept, and one's talking in your right ear and another voice is talking in your left. It was really, so I hope they play into that with the gameplay, and clearly got more budget. I feel like this could be Xbox's God of War, it done right.
That's
You did say you wanted me to talk about stuff that I was looking forward to, and I just went on a rant about Hellblade.
No, that's awesome. I thought, I mean, like, playing the original Hellblade, just to give that a say, I did like it. It's an interesting take. You take something that may be historically accurate, you add that to mythology, and then you add that to a real life problem that is still going on now, but back then. Like, I did think that was a unique twist, but I also felt like that it kind of, did what is it spoiling to kind of give the,
I think it's been out long enough, hasn't it?
Guys, I don't want to spoil anything major, but essentially it's covering this Norse era individual who experiences these Norse-esque these mythological challenges, but you also are aware that she has a form of schizophrenia, and so it's like to me, I thought that was a super interesting take. I don't feel like that after you've played the game that it really warrants a sequel. I think that the charm of it was the fact that you have this character experiencing all of those types of things. I think it would have been equally interesting if you were to make a sequel to be a different mythos, a different person, and perhaps even a different psychological address. But that's just me personally. I don't know. I haven't seen much of the new stuff, but
honestly scrolling here, and there's not as much as I remember like being really excited for. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, I'm excited for that.
Yes,
I like Borderlands. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I like the setting.
Yeah, there's actually, I mean, there weren't a ton that I was incredibly excited about, but there were a few that the ones that I was excited about I thought were really cool.
Real quick, I wanted to just talk about this Wonderlands real quick. I am worried about the writing of this game because I didn't like Borderlands 3, the story and characters at all. Gameplay wise, which is why I carried on playing it was much better than 1 and 2. Just like the little improvements and stuff. I did not like the writing, so I'm worried how this is going to play, because I do think I love Borderlands. I really do, especially 2. It's one of my favourite games. I feel like they can go a bit overboard on some of the writing sometimes and the humour. So I'm kind of worried about that, but in terms of the actual game, I think it looks like a lot of fun, and I think that comes out March.
Yeah,
definitely checking that out. But so what were some of yours highlights?
Well, just throwing this out there for you as well, really, if you don't mind, from Borderlands 3, I despise, and I know that that's part of the goal, but I despised Tyreen. I hate Tyreen.
They were bad villains. Like, they can use the excuse that it was on purpose, but I just think the whole game had like poor writing. You could tell it was a different person than 2. Like, I can't remember his name, but I know he didn't work on 3, the lead writer of 2.
Oh yeah.
That's all I'm worried about the new game. I think I can turn my brain off to some of that stuff and just play the game if it's fun enough. I would like it to also be good. Like, I'd like every aspect to be good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, is it too much to ask that you get your money's worth? I agree with you.
Yeah.
Handsome Jack, yeah. Was that to me, like that's he was devious, but he was charming, but he was like
a great villain. It's like kind of tough to follow up from that, so I gave it in a way, but I think they could have done better than what they did.
I felt like that they took the because yet again, this I don't think is a spoiler, but this is just my account. Like they you know who the bad guy is right on the onset. There's no this. Well, I say that there's some things, but yeah, to me it was it's the same thing as and they had a villain. They played it as a bit part. The Spider-Man PS4/PS5 game, they had that social media influencer villain who had followers that were basically so insane.
Right. Yeah.
It was Speedball or whatever her name was. I don't remember. But anyway, that's basically all these villains are. Is they're social media influencers that happen to have a special power that, as far as we see, is pretty tough, but at the same time, they don't, in my opinion, great power doesn't mean great, like they seem super not intelligent. So even if you have a great power, what good is it if you don't know how to appropriately use it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate them. But the on the upside, the gameplay was great, like you said, and then of course it's always fun to get to shoot things you hate on a game.
It's true.
So. No, for me, I think my list may be similar, but also there's certainly some standouts. So Star Wars Eclipse is my big one that I'm excited about, and I know that's the one you probably skipped over there. So
I'm excited for it too, but I'd let you talk about that one.
No, I appreciate it. You sent me the trailer for it, and there's so many things I'm excited about that are a part of it. Firstly, obviously it's Star Wars. Everybody knows I like Star Wars. I think Ash and I have a bet, which is essentially that at some point in time during these, one of us will mention Star Wars. That'll be me, and then he'll likely mention Mortal Kombat at some point. Was it Mortal Kombat?
Mortal Kombat. There we go. There's mine.
Is that the one we bet on? Yeah. It's not a legitimate. It's not a legitimate monetary bet, but you know, it's the. But so I'm incredibly excited because it's Star Wars, and I'm incredibly excited because it's a studio that I actually like. But it's a unique studio for this, in my opinion, which is Quantic Dream. For anybody who's unfamiliar with Quantic Dream's works, they did things such as Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, and Detroit. Beyond Two Souls, in my opinion, being the weakest of those three. They also did... I think it's nice if you're playing with a significant other, it enhances that, but I don't think that's the game's fault. I think that's just circumstantial. They also did, what was the other? Indigo Prophecy, which I think was also known as Fahrenheit elsewhere. All of those are really, really good games, though. I mean, yet again, beyond being the weakest of them, it's still a pretty solid game. And they're very story-based games, and the objective is to really immerse you in them and make them very puzzly. So I'm a little curious to see how they're going to do that, if they're going to try and continue that trend with this Star Wars game, or if they're going to make it where it's a little bit more, there's more of a fighting, more of a, the trailer didn't really give a lot of hint on that. The trailer also introduces some stuff that I am not incredibly familiar with. It's new lore that's not been before. So it's during the High Republic era, which for anybody who is a fan of Star Wars, specifically the novels of Star Wars, has been kind of the trend to go into the High Republic era, which is essentially before Episode 1, a decent amount, but not so much so that we wouldn't see some familiar faces. When, before we knew about the Sith and all that, before the Jedi had kind of been disrupted. And we see another alien species kind of doing this ritualistic type thing, and they almost are vampiric. And that's another thing I really love, I love vampire lore, specifically Dracula. I'm not a Twilight fan. And I know that for a fact because I just got finished watching those with my wife, and I realized how abysmal they are. But we had fun. It seems like they're kind of going to mesh this into the alien species. So I'm really curious to see what they do with the era, because this will be its actual debut on screen, I believe, with the exception of maybe some... No, I think this would actually be its debut on screen. I'm curious to see what they're going to do with these new alien species. I'm curious to see what Quantic Dream will do with the playstyle, considering Star Wars has almost always been an action-orientated game. I'm pretty excited to see all of that, honestly. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I was also interested in seeing... I'm also a horror... I'm not a horror guru by any stretch, but I was also incredibly excited to see Silent Hill, the creator of Silent Hill, announcing Slitterhead. So yeah. I was really, really excited to see that. Knowing that it was... how do you say his name? Kiichiro Toyama? Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Kiichiro Toyama, I think is how you say his name. My apologies if I've butchered it, but anyway, it was this. It was just this really, really interesting. There's a trailer out for it as well, and it's just another really interesting add to the horror theme. The title Slitterhead, the minute I heard that, immediately invoked without knowing anything else, immediately invoked the feel of Silent Hill, and the trailer does a lot the same. So it's definitely got this really...
It has some action too, which I'm fine with.
Oh yeah, it's just I'm just excited to see what the thing about horror though is yet again, and I'm not an expert in it by any means, so feel free to opine if you think differently. But I feel like that horror focuses, and I'm gonna give credit again to Resident Evil 8. I feel like that a lot of horror had focused or focuses on these types of quick jump scares, or maybe this overly grotesque imagery. And I think Resident Evil did honestly, I think they did a decent job in the, yet again, I'm not going to try and spoil it because it's been out for a long time. It's been out for almost a year, but this is well worth playing. There is a really, really interesting segment in the Benevento mansion, I believe.
My favorite section, yeah.
That's mine too. It's just... I feel like that was horror done right. It's not just grotesque imagery. It's not just jump scares. There's a legitimate sense of looming terror the entire time you're playing that. And so I'm excited to see if they can do horror in that same way to give you that kind of creepy vibe. Another game that I was really interested in seeing, there were a couple that I was interested in seeing, and yet again, this is me being interested in new, just trying to see kind of new takes on things. But there was presumably, I'm sure that this is the case, but it was I think Aaron Flynn from BioWare, or formerly from BioWare, was working on a kind of steampunk Victorian survival style game.
Oh right, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, Nightingale, I think is what they've got it called, at least right now. Nightingale or the Nightingale. But it's this kind of Victorian era of like fantasy survival thing and I don't know a ton of what it's going to be like or look like. I know that my wife and I play Don't Starve, so I love the kind of survival aspect of things, but then to see it in the Victorian era, which I love, this kind of steampunky visual, and it's a fully realized like three-dimensional game. It's not just this kind of 2D thing like the other one, so I think it'll be a lot of fun. I want them to do... I know that they're going to have multiplayer, they've already said that much, but I'd like to see a single mode player and a cohesive story. I don't want it to just be continued ad nauseum, but I'm actually pretty excited to see what they do with that. Another one that had kind of jumped out to me, and yet again, this is just me. Maybe this is just quenching an old, 20-plus-year-old itch. But there was a game called The Evil West. Did you see that one?
Yes, that's one. Yes, I forgot about that. I'm really looking forward to that.
That looks so freaking cool.
From the devs behind the Shadow Warrior games.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen Shadow Warrior 3, it's coming out in March. It looks amazing.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Like Doom. It looks like Doom, but like I think it's Japanese setting.
Oh, that's gonna be cool. That's gonna be good. Me personally, I remember when, and maybe it's just my mind, but I remember in the early 2000s, it to me always seemed like we were getting two types of video game all the time, and that was fantasy, like Knights, King Arthur style things. We were getting Oblivion, and we were getting those types of games. Yeah. And then the other one was even earlier on. We were getting like westerns. We got Red Dead Revolver, Gun. We got It's just so, and honestly, I like Gun. I like Red Dead Revolver. Obviously, Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2 have done awesome. I honestly like Western, cowboy style Western games. And then so this one is basically this in the same vein, but it's this kind of supernatural. And what was that other one? There was one on the Xbox and I think PlayStation as well, and it was a Western, like you hunt lycanthropes and vampires, but you're a... Oh, I'm sorry, I bumped the microphone there.
Oh.
I can't...
I know what you're talking about.
I have... I was gonna say I have that one, but I can't go to the thing right now to...
That's bugging me.
Yeah, I cannot think of it. But anyway, so there's always been these just tons and tons and tons of like Western stuff. Dark Watch.
Dark Watch.
That was the one I was thinking of. So like there were a lot of these, and I really, I personally really just, I like those. I enjoy those. So to see this kind of.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I just looked it up.
Did you play that one?
Yeah.
Just like these these like gunslinger / fantasy, like I'm a cowboy killing lycanthropes and so, like I don't know, that's just that tickles a fun part of my brain.
Yeah, I'm the same. Really looking forward to that.
And then lastly, the only thing that I was looking forward to, and this is just yet again, this is a personal piece of it. There were a lot of games that they kind of announced that I feel like are going to let me down, but they're not necessarily, guaranteed to do so. It's like there are some reboots that are coming that I'm kind of excited about. I'd be excited to see. I'm excited to see the new Saints Row. I enjoyed the first couple of those. Me personally, my thoughts are that Saints Row was Grand Theft Auto when Grand Theft Auto wasn't there. Now that Grand Theft Auto is coming through as much as Skyrim, hopefully they're coming through to be the new Grand Theft Auto again. That kind of stuff. I guess The Expanse was also kind of exciting. I did like Telltale, so knowing that they were coming out with another episodic. I don't want to pay microtransaction, but I did like those. But yeah, Saints Row, that was the other one. I think I mean, I was interested in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing, but then I found out it was exclusively multiplayer. But being a native of Texas, I thought that would be interesting. But yes, the Saints Row game, like my opinion on those, you had Saints Row 1 and 2, which I think were Grand Theft Auto when Grand Theft Auto wasn't coming through. I'm not a fan of Grand Theft Auto 4. And I think Saints Row did a good job of picking that slack up, and I thought it was a lot more fun and Grand Theft Auto-esque. And then when Grand Theft Auto 5 comes out, I think that Saints Row decided to go as outlandish as they possibly could with, 3 and 4 and, aliens and crude weapons and superpowers, and I thought that was fun. And then now we haven't got Grand Theft Auto 6. Grand Theft Auto 6 is, as far as I know, nowhere really on the horizon. Maybe Saints Row's coming back to be down-to-earth Grand Theft Auto again until we get actual Grand Theft Auto. So I was kind of interested to see to see if that could be a feasible way to go, but I didn't see any sort of footage on it on that one. I just had read the announcement on that one. So
me with Saints Row, and I don't mean to be like the negative one, and I've watched the gameplay and stuff, and just the characters, it seems so generic, and any kind of personality and charm that Saints Row was known for, I feel like it's just been pulled out of the game. It's like, why is it even called Saints Row? At least based on what I've seen. Maybe it's going to be great. I hope it is, because now a lot of Saints Row fans want a new one. Just it looks so generic. It looked like one of those games you would see on a TV show where they're playing a game. You can see it on the telly, and that's what it looked like to me. There's just it just looks so like anything that comes out nowadays, and I'm like, is it even the name? You know why it's got the name, because it'll make more money.
Yeah,
I just feel like the personality and what Saints Row's known for, even the first two games were obviously a bit more serious, but they always had that wacky kind of over the top kind of feel to them. I don't know, I feel like judging by the gameplay anyway, I'd recommend checking it out, because maybe you'll still be interested. I feel like the characters are just so there's no personality to them. Me, as I say, they're nowadays characters. I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but I'm sure some people know.
I hope my hope is that it's not going to be that way.
I hope you're right. I hope it's great. I'd love a new Saints Row.
Because I felt
good one.
I mean, do you agree? Do you feel the same way? I mean, I don't believe you're a tremendous fan of Grand Theft Auto 4 either. Is that correct?
I think it's the worst in the series.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you there wholeheartedly. So,
literally worse than the originals. By the way, I'd rather play GTA 1. It's fun.
I think that's where we got Hotline Miami, and
That's true. I never thought of that. Yeah,
I quite like. I bought the collection where it comes with 1 and 2, and then there's a UK one that I cannot remember.
Yeah, that was so random. I remember that.
But I have those, and they're all really fun. Like I said, I felt like that's kind of where we got Hotline Miami. But my thing was, 4 was just such a... Now, Ballad of Gay Tony was pretty fun. I did like that, okay. But 4 on its face was just not really all that good. It was very frustrating. And so, I think that... I feel like that Saints Row kind of came in for us then. Kind of came in a pinch and was like, hey, we'll be Grand Theft Auto. And they did. They did real well.
I've always enjoyed Saints Row, but I'm one of the people that actually prefers 3 to 1 and 2.
3's good.
I do think they went a bit overboard with 4, although I enjoyed it at the time. I completed it, I had a lot of fun. 3 was the exact place I wanted Saints Row to be. I thought that was a really fun game. And I liked 2. I can't remember 1 very well, but I remember playing a lot of 2. 3 was when I was hooked with that series, and I was playing that all the time. It did take over GTA for me, especially with you said how 4 was the one that was representing Grand Theft Auto.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely think that's one of the most boring games ever made. There's nothing to do in that game. The appeal of it was it's GTA on the next gen consoles is what GTA 4 was.
Are you sure it's boring? I mean, I know I got a phone call at least once every 5 seconds to go bowling.
Oh my god, remember.
Roman's a fine character, but my goodness, I get that call and Hey, cousin, let's go bowling. And I had no,
Things
Roman.
like- yeah.
I don't
It
want...
just came from these free GTAs on PS2 and that generation that were all really fun.
Yeah. It's just...
I just felt like they took all the fun out of GTA, and obviously there's a lot of humor. I feel like you've got a bit serious with 4.
Yeah.
Obviously it's not like this super, you know what I mean. So Saints Row did take over for me anyway. That fun city open world I always say, because I don't feel like there are many of those games anymore. I feel like Watch Dogs was the last one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Every open world game now is like mythical or fantasy, isn't it? There's no city ones like Sleeping Dogs. Sleeping Dogs is amazing.
Sleeping Dogs is fantastic. I guess Just Cause kind of does it a little bit. But
That's true. Yeah.
Just a little bit. Which I do. I'm not gonna lie. I do like the Just Cause. The Far Cry and the Just Cause games. Far Cry, I think, has become a bit generic in my opinion. Just Cause as well, but I do happen to enjoy them. And Just Cause is just outlandish enough for me to be like, for me to find something fresh in it. Whereas the Far Cry games, I think, kind of discovered that with their apex at Far Cry 3, I want to say. Maybe 4 if you really like Pagan Men, but I think most people preferred Voss.
Far Cry 6 very fast, and I've enjoyed every Far Cry game besides, I think it's called New Dawn, which was one of the spin-offs. It was the one I didn't like, and then after that I tried 6, and I was bored, and always enjoyed Far Cry, so it could just be my taste in games, because like I'd like to play one of the old ones again, see if I still enjoy it. Like, is it Far Cry 6's problem, or is it like just my taste changing? But I have to try one of the old ones.
I liked 1, 3, and 4 quite a bit. 5's not bad actually either. To be completely fair, 2 I did not like because you were having to mitigate malaria.
I'm actually a huge fan of the spin-offs besides New Dawn. I love Blood Dragon, but I'm a fan of all 80s stuff, and so it's just my kind of thing. And I actually think Primal's really fun. A lot of people can't stand that game, but
which one?
It's a really fun game. Primal, you know, the prehistoric one. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, Far Cry. Yes, I do remember that.
Now that got a lot of hate because it was basically a reskinned map of Far Cry 4. I always enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I actually like the spin-offs more than the mainline games. Besides New Dawn, I think that game's just bad.
I didn't give it. I honestly have it. I just haven't given it a fair.
Yeah, you're not missing much.
Yeah, it was, but yeah, I don't. Primal was cool. That was a cool spinoff. But then they kind of jumped right back on the bandwagon. I don't know. Maybe I'm too forgiving to it. Like I said, I didn't like the fighting off malaria thing. I thought that was frustrating. But then Voss was really cool. Pagan Men was really cool. The whole cult thing of 5 was really kind of awesome. So maybe I'm a little too forgiving.
They're always interesting, I find, especially in 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
Got really cool villains that you almost like root for in a way. You want to see more of them and stuff.
I heard something about one of them, and I don't know where. But I heard something about maybe Voss making a return or something.
Well, in the DLCs for 6, each DLC focuses on each one of those villains.
Really?
So, first DLC you play as Voss, the second one you play as Pagan Min, and the third one that hasn't came out yet you play as the guy from 5.
That's pretty cool.
I don't know how or what way they're doing it, but that's their DLC line-up for 6, basically.
That's pretty cool, actually.
The Voss one and Pagan Min are already out. You can buy them now.
Yeah, I would like to give them. I'd like to give that a shot. I honestly think that would be. That seems like a lot of fun. So, let me. Let's see. Sorry, my phone was going off there. I didn't want to do that. I don't know. Maybe I'm too forgiving, but yeah. So, I don't think that there's the greatest clever segue to this. Honestly, I think it's really more of the inverse. To be fair. But we were talking about Game Awards announcements, and so in that, on our high, we're kind of talking about games that we're most excited about, things that we're really looking forward to. But I am curious. These all have the potential to be it, but as it's been so far, what are the most disappointing games? What's one of the most what is the most disappointing game buy and experience that you've ever had?
I was trying to think of this because I have got an answer, but it's flipped since. And that was Street Fighter 5.
Okay.
I'm a huge Street Fighter fan. Like, you know, I'm a fan of fighting games.
Mm-hmm.
Street Fighter's one of my favourite franchises. It's my earliest game in memory. I love that series. When 5 came out, I don't even know if you were aware how bare bones that game was.
Yes.
How rushed it was. And I remember putting it on. I was so excited because I'm a fighting game fan. I love this stuff. Just when I looked at the menu and how, like, just the features, there was just nothing there. I don't even think the launch had the ability to play against the CPU. You couldn't even play a single fight against the computer. That's how bare bones it was. I remember, like, because I always go into training mode when I buy a fighting game, just to get used to the mechanics and stuff. I remember I was learning Ken and all this, and then when I got back to the menu, there was like a sigh. I was like, that's all it is, that's it. Like, I can go online, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
It's one of the most disappointing games I've ever bought. It's 100% got better now. I would say that game is a great game now. It's ended its cycle and everything now. It's pretty much done. Definitely improved, even though it should have been done on launch. I'm not giving them excuses. It's terrible. I think they're in a lot of trouble too. Sony actually funded that game, which is why it's a PS4 exclusive.
Okay.
That wasn't actually going to be made, but Sony funded it for them. And just completely bare bones. No arcade mode. I love that stuff in a fighting game. Like, no pro or anything, like, but I enjoy fighting games. I definitely play them more than a casual level. I enjoy the arcade modes and secret boss fights and all that stuff that you'd find, like, back in the day. It was just, there's nothing there, and I remember just looking at the menu screen like, Jesus, that's all it is. If I've ever been so disappointed by a franchise I like, knowing that that's the game. Like, I can just go in training mode or go online with all of the tryhards. I think I only played it for like another 10 minutes and then I went on to something else. I've since played it for hundreds of hours, like, since it's improved. That is the one that came to mind of something I love or was looking forward to. It's just when you realise what's there or what's not there. It was like definitely one of the most disappointing games I've ever bought.
So, I'm curious. Did they just make it so? Did they do it in expansion pass format, or when you put it in, does it now have all the content it's meant to have?
I feel like it's just had add-ons and DLC, and there has been, if I'm correct, there has been free updates and a lot of free stuff added.
Okay.
I don't think they charged for the arcade mode or the story mode.
Okay,
they definitely didn't, because that would have been ridiculous. None of that was there at launch. It was just, I can literally picture the screen. It was like online tutorial. You can do a little challenge to do some of the characters' combos. That was it. And then they had this shop, which obviously they never get the shop wrong, do they, these games?
No.
Anything that gets them more money, they'll make sure that's running well.
Yeah, that's true.
It's had just expansions. It's had like over 30 DLC characters, which, yes, they haven't been free. It's just how fighting games are now.
Sure, yeah.
It definitely improved. Like I said, it had its last character in December, I think. That's done now, and everyone's waiting for like Street Fighter 6. Hope they don't make the same mistakes. But it was one of the most bare bones games I've ever played. I feel like, besides Mortal Kombat, I feel like fighting games are kind of bare bones anyway. I feel like they're so focused on online nowadays. No one tries to put any fun modes in or cool secrets in arcade modes, and that's what I remember about fighting games. I feel like that's kind of been lost. Street Fighter 5 was the perfect example of that.
We'll say the DLC thing too. I mean, not necessarily with just Street Fighter 5. Was it Dead or Alive that had like?
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It's like 700. I don't know exactly, but I may be exaggerating over. But it's like $730 to buy everything expansion.
I think it was actually in the thousands, or at least 1,000.
Oh, I was under exaggerating. Okay, I didn't realize. Good lord, that's
DOA 5, Dead or Alive 5 is ridiculous. How much stupid shit you can buy in that game.
Why? Like, that's so. So you said you flip flopped between two. So I if they're enough that you flip flop between two, I know it's most disappointed, but I am really curious. Can I go ahead and hear your other one as well? The other contender.
I had a few, but the one is actually a game that you said you were quite a fan of, and that was Cyberpunk.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
It's like, I don't know if I can necessarily. This is the one that comes to mind. Like, I don't know if I can necessarily say it's most disappointing. I was struggling to think of some now because I'm not like a huge Witcher fan or even a huge fan of that studio. Got an unpopular opinion. I feel like they've made one good game or one great game. And that's Witcher 3.
Sure.
I'm not even a big fan of that. This hype, I did fall into the hype a little bit. So I remember playing Witcher 3 and I was like, I want this team to do a sci-fi game. Just any kind of sci-fi world. And when it was announced they were doing that, I was like really excited, and I'm a much bigger fan of that setting than I am of like a fantasy setting. I prefer sci-fi over that the only kind of fantasy setting I like is Lord of the Rings. I'm actually not a big fan of that kind of stuff. When I knew they were doing this sci-fi world, like this Blade Runner kind of thing, I was really looking forward to it, and the closer it got, I was getting more excited. When I remember playing that, it was so buggy. I can't remember if I played on PS4. When did that come out?
Was it not the end of 2020?
It's got to have been PS4 because I haven't played any PS5 version of it. That's true. And it was just so buggy for me. I was one of the people that had a lot of issues. Like, one of the missions early on where you're carrying the woman, she was like dangling on her knees and I was gliding across the floor. Then like there was dildos everywhere on the stairs in that game for no reason. It's all these weird things. It's like cars flying over bridges and like killing you.
Oh my goodness.
What's going on? This is the Witcher devs, and like I said, I'm not even a huge fan of them, but that game is a high quality game, Witcher 3. I don't care if you hate the game, you can't deny that it's a well-made game, especially the side quests. They're like main missions in other games in comparison. I would say that's quite disappointing for me because I did fall into the hype when it was finding more about it, and it was reminding me of Blade Runner, and it's cool, like you could start the game differently. I thought that was really interesting, start in different places. When I played it, I was one of the unlucky ones that had just issue after issue, like constantly. Definitely say that was disappointing for me as well. Street Fighter was more impactful because I'm just more of a fan.
Sure, yeah. Well, and yet again, I enjoy the game. Of course, we can have our difference of opinion here. That's one of those things where it's, I think that's the thing that we would like to encourage. But I want it also to be said that my opinion is not based off playing off of the previous generation console. There's a great chance that if I had been playing on a previous generation console, I would be equally agitated because I saw what those look like and it was just night and day. So,
do you want to give it a chance, by the way, when there's the next gen upgrade? I am intrigued to give that game another shot because I just like the world.
It's like,
I couldn't play it because it was just constantly crashing and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's what when I played it originally on the Series X, and it plays well. And I had a friend come over and we were talking about Cyberpunk. He had actually purchased this. Now this is where I understand the frustration with that game. He purchased the limited edition Cyberpunk Xbox One X.
Yes.
And Cyberpunk doesn't run well on it. It's just a paint job. And so he told me he was frustrated, whatever. And then we came over and he looked and he asked me if I would turn it on the Series X. He had not seen at that time the Series X run. He hadn't seen Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is a pretty game on the Series X. Flaws are still there, but it's definitely a lot more well put together, or at least a lot more well processed. And so I turned it on and he was like half of this stuff doesn't show up. Half of this stuff doesn't show up on the old console. So my opinion is based on what I played it on, and I completely believe that I would be underwhelmed, if not completely disappointed, if I had played it on the previous consoles. So, but that having been said, I mean, you may play it on the new console and be like, "Nah, I still hate it," and that's fine too.
Yeah.
I hope that's not the case, but that's fine too if it is. Yeah, so for me, there's only one game that sticks out at all when it comes to. I've been disappointed in game buys before, but I just this was it. So I when it comes to Elder Scrolls, I've played Elder Scrolls since Daggerfall, Arena or Daggerfall, I can't remember. I've played both of those. I don't remember which I played first. I've played Elder Scrolls games for a long time. And matter of fact, Daggerfall has a new patch out even that just came out like a year or two ago that's, I think it's like Unreal Engine patch or something. I'm actually pretty excited about that because I liked Daggerfall. But anyway, I'd played them, and Arena's okay, especially for the time. Daggerfall's actually pretty good. Even by today's standards, it's got some really interesting stuff. Morrowind comes out. Morrowind's alright too, yeah, for the time, you know. So these have all kind of been building on top of each other. I feel that it hit its zenith in Oblivion. Oblivion
That's
is
the one I played the most. Yeah.
I love Oblivion. It's well done, it's concise, it's, you know, environmentally different. It's the first game I ever got every achievement on. There's 60 achievements, or 50 originally, 60 if you count the Shivering Isles. And expansion packs, Knights of the Nine, Shivering Isles, I think have 5 achievements apiece, and then there's 50 more, which are essentially just going through the respective guilds and doing all those quests, as well as completing the main story. I think it's 10 for each. Guild you go through, and then 10 for the main story, and then there's 5 for Knights of the Nine and 5 for Shivering Isles. So I got all of those. I mean, I played this game into the ground, and I still enjoy it. And this is back when it freshly came out. Back when you could, I don't know if you remember the lockpick glitch, but you could pull back on a bow, and you could let an arrow go. And if you dropped the item in your inventory at the same time you dropped the arrow from that you had knocked into the thing, when the arrow went and hit the wall, it would split into however many of that object you needed. Essentially, however many arrows you had in your quiver, it would duplicate.
Such a weird glitch. Like, how did that even happen?
Oh, it was my favorite. So I would use it for lockpicks because it was pretty. It didn't cost. I mean, I tried to use it for watermelons once, and the game froze because the watermelons are huge. But you know, yeah, if you have 41 arrows in your quiver, and you knock one of those arrows, and you've got 40 arrows in your quiver now, and you let go of the arrow, and you let go of your lockpicks, that one arrow would split into 40 lockpicks, and you could go pick those lockpicks up. So it cost you one arrow, but you got 40 lockpicks. And you know, it's just one of those things. Like I every aspect of this game, and I still love this game. In fact, I think that, in my opinion, Skyrim is far inferior to it, even with expansions.
I agree.
But with the exception of, I do think that they did the whole werewolf vampire transformation better. I think Oblivion's was a little bit frustrating. You didn't get the big cool vampire form. You got the slightly pale, sickly looking, you know, can't be out in the sun very often. Here's a power you get that glows your hand, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm so hyped up. I've been playing Oblivion forever and a day. I love it. I'm enjoying it. Everything's good. I go and I get my Game Informer magazine, set it down on the table, and I'm reading. And as I'm reading through it, there's an announcement for another game that's in the same vein as Oblivion. It's this knight's fantastical open world, all that kind of stuff, dragons, the whole 9 yards. I'm like, this is great. It claims to be Oblivion on steroids. That is the actual claim, in quotes. Well, I've just played Oblivion. Oblivion's a great game. I am excited to play a game that is claiming to be it on steroids. So I run out when it comes out. I pre-order the thing. When it comes out, I come out to get it at launch. It's $80, I think, $79.99. I may be wrong. It's either $70 or $80, right? And granted, this is the early to mid 2000s, right? So it's not even 20. We're not even looking at 22. It's like 2007.
Yeah.
So I go to get the game when it comes out. And this collector's edition, it's got a sleeve on it. It's this white, you know, like decorated embossed sleeve. Very nice. And it is the game Two Worlds. For anybody who doesn't know. Yeah. I pop the game in. I start playing it. The voice acting is abysmal. The graphics are awful. The character can't move 10 steps without a load screen. And it doesn't pull up a full load screen. It just stops, freezes you in place, loads the world with a bar. Now you can go. The I mean, just nothing works out at all. The combat is clunky. You can't tell whether you're hitting something or not hitting something when you're trying to read the script. And granted, my eyes are decent now as an adult. My eyes were, as an older adult rather, my eyes were good then as a young adult. So, like, that's the whole thing. Like, my eyes weren't bad at that point either. And I couldn't read the script. The color was the same as or similar to the parchment, and it was teeny tiny. And the inventory system was ridiculously difficult to manage, and we couldn't figure it out. We couldn't get the whole thing figured out. And so all of this happens. I'm like, I can't. There's no way I spent $70 on this. I go up to the guy and I'm like, I take it back to GameStop. It's been unwrapped and everything. I'm like, I'd like to return this. He's like, you can't return the new game. It's been opened. I'd only just been there like an hour before. I'm like, no, I got to return this. He's like, well, what reason is it? Well, it's not that it's rated M for mature. I'm old enough to do that, so that's not a big deal. It's not that it's a bad game, because he doesn't care. That's not his reason. So I told him flat out, I said, I need to return this. I didn't realize it had content that I can't abide for religious reasons. Well, he returned that. He didn't realize that bad game design, poor voice acting, and just god-awful graphics are against my religion of good games. so I left with my money, thankfully, in that case. I did go back 5 years ago, maybe 5 years, maybe 6 years ago, and bought it again for $2, just because I wanted to see if I was being unfair. I played it again, and it is worse actually than I remember it being, which is something. So fortunately, I was able to get the money back, but I was so excited. I had pre-ordered that game, almost a year in advance. I was waiting. I had spent $80 on it, or $70 or $80 on it. And then to get it and it not play well, sound good, look good. I mean, there was no redeeming quality. The music is not impressive. The theme is okay. But
just okay.
If you play the game from start to finish, the story is awful. There is no satisfaction in that story. The story ends, I don't think I'm spoiling it for anybody. The story ends where it began. Like, you start off riding on a horse with a lady, and you end off riding on a horse with a lady. And the difference is, hopefully we'll find a town that's more hospitable than this one we spent the entire game in. The lady, you think, maybe there will be a romantic connection there. Maybe I'll find my soulmate. She's your sister, so no, you don't. You don't find your soulmate. That's your sister.
Star Wars.
Yes, but at least in Star Wars they didn't know. But in this one, you're riding with her.
Yeah,
she's your... So it's like... So you don't find your soulmate. There's no romance. The bad guy is not really bad. You really have nothing to do with him. There's no connection there. None of these people are helping you. You don't really want to help them. You have no reason to help them except for to find your sister. Your sister was, it's just like the whole game. The story's not good. The music's not good, except for maybe the theme. The characters, just nothing. That is the most, in my opinion, irredeemable game that exists.
Did it have a sequel?
It did. I bought that too. It's bad.
But still.
I bought the second one to see if it was any better, because we got an apology letter. So I worked with GameStop. I was the manager of GameStop for years and years and years, and did different things in different capacities as well. And we got letters from the developer, which was Twin Peaks Studios, I believe, and South Peak, not Twin Peaks. That's a movie. South Peak Studios. And we got an apology letter. There was just, hey, we know how bad the game is. We were so sorry that it was that bad. Here's what we're doing. Here's what you can do. But we are making a second game, and it's going to have all of these patches and things implemented. And of course, me not wanting to believe so quickly again, I didn't. I bought the game way later in its life cycle. It is absolutely a substantial increase from the first one in terms of quality. It is still not good.
Yeah.
But it is quite a lot better. There's a crafting system that's actually really good, and not just for its style game. It's actually a good crafting system. I would argue that this crafting system could be implemented in top tier games as a whole. It's a good feature.
Yeah.
But the controls are still sloppy. The story's still all over the place. The graphics are much better. The voice acting is somewhat better. The music is somewhat better. Those kinds of things. So it's, is it a good game? Honestly, I'd put it. I wouldn't say that. I'd say it's probably a 4.5. It's just below average for me.
Never played it, but I am very aware of game and the fact that he got a sequel and stuff.
Yeah, the first one's an easy 2. It's not a good game. It's not completely broken. It's you can technically play and pass it, but yeah, it's a 2. But the next one's a good improvement. It's a 2. Like I said, I'd say 2.5 points up. So a 4.5, just below average, an average game for me, and that's because the camera's pretty awful, and the combat's not very cohesive. But honestly, I would give it an average if it could fix those 2 issues. If it ever did, which it won't, I'd give it a 5. I'd give it an average.
Have to try it one of the days.
I hope you do at some point, and I hope that I get this. I would love to have this another episode where you come back with this long rant about how badly it had wronged you, and I hope that you don't spend more than you have to on it, if any. I hope it's given to you.
If I came back and it was I just couldn't stop talking about how good it was.
If it was here's the thing. I respect your opinion, but you'd be objectively wrong in that case. I'm just teasing. Maybe there are people out there that are super big fans of it. And if there are,
got a sequel. Well, that doesn't mean anything, but it means it probably sold okay.
Well, I think so. I think that the sequel was supposed to be a reboot because the story is similar. There is actually a potential. You still don't. There's not a great resolution at the end, but it's infinitely better than the resolution of the first one. But the story is basically the same story. So it's
the full name of the sequel.
Two Worlds 2.
It's really just 2.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
2 Worlds 2.
Yeah, it's just a Roman numeral for 2 on there. But I don't think it's really a 2. To me, it really is a reboot. That you and your sister are still going again. So I don't know why they called it 2.
Maybe just wanted to try and in a way reboot it.
Yeah,
just couldn't really.
Just say change 2 to dual, and then put that out there. Just don't associate it at all with the first one as a But yeah, it's not great. I mean, it's definitely better, but it's not great. If you, like I said, if you ever get a chance, you play it. If you do like it, great. I mean, I'm happy to have introduced you to something, hopefully, but I just have a very strong feeling that there aren't very many people that existed that really like this game, especially for a game studio to write a vendor and say, we apologize.
That's crazy.
So, all right, so we're definitely over time, but we're winding down. I do want to go ahead and get some final thoughts on that because we've talked about this on the whole. So the last topic is really just a kind of encapsulation of all of what we're seeing, and it is where do you think the gaming industry is going as a whole? We're seeing these big buyouts. We're seeing the new game announcements. We have our disappointing games to use as a kind of opposite leverage. But where do you see it going, and what do you think, if it is going in this direction, you would like out of it?
One thing I do think it's going is all digital.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing it's happening now. I feel like Microsoft especially clear now that they don't care. I don't know if it's don't care. They don't have as much interest in consoles or physical games. They want that. I feel like their end goal is Game Pass to be everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But they want to be like the Netflix of games. So I do think that's their goal, which would be all digital. Not something I necessarily want. Like, I'm not a collector, or I do like to get some physical games, but if anything, more of my games are digital. So saying I'm not against it, but I would like the option, which I do think the option's going to be there. Like, you can still buy DVDs, even though I don't think the majority of people do. I think that'll be the same for games. I think that still going to be some physical games. I feel like Microsoft will drop out of it completely. It's just everything's Game Pass, everything's digital, and I do feel like eventually Sony will follow that, and then Nintendo will follow that too. Everything will be digital. That's one thing I don't necessarily want. I feel like you're probably more so a collector than I am. What do you think about that when it comes to the digital side of stuff?
I mean, I agree with you, but at the same time, I was one of the recent pickups that I'd had that I had gotten to play for a little bit was the Tony Hawk 1 and 2 Pro Skater Collection HD. Same store, sold it for like $5. So I was all over that. And I'm an odd guy, where I went and decided that it would be a good idea and a fun idea to read these end-user license agreements ahead of things. And Tekken 7 has probably one of the most on its nose, what they're telling you do and don't get. Me personally, I do like to think of myself as a collector is the word that a lot of people use. When Mass Effect came out, my friends called me the collector for the games. I like to think of myself more as a chronicler, someone who keeps the history of gaming alive through having pieces of it, and those pieces having stories to them and such. And the problem with that is obviously that part of it goes away. That sentimental value can kind of go away with it. There are cartridges that I have from childhood, my old Atari Pitfall cartridge, and there's stories that go with that, and you lose that. But when it comes to the thing that I think will affect everyone, it is these end user license agreements that people kind of gloss over. And when you read them and they tell you how not having a physical version of the media effectively allows for a blockade if you violate terms of service, which are arbitrary there are some clearly highlighted versions, but then there are also bullet points that say if X company deems X activity unworthy, or an issue. And then they say, oh, well, we can essentially lock you out of your digital game, right? I mean, you can be banned from Xbox Live and potentially, I don't know exactly how that works, but potentially lose a portion of your games in the ban because they require that in order to verify that you can play it. So, it goes beyond just the sentimental value to going into where I feel that people should have ownership when you buy something. I think you should own that thing, and that no one should take it from you again, and that the taking of it from you would be theft. And I think with digital, we blur that line so that companies still have this kind of thread-like line to your game console, and all they have to do is just give it a gentle tug and they can take away, So, yeah, I never want it to go all digital. I understand why people would like it for the convenience, and it doesn't mean that I haven't purchased digital games. But I would absolutely not like an all-digital world. I would always prefer physical medium.
It's interesting that you say about they can just take them away. That happens quite often with multiplayer games.
Mm-hmm.
When you see ones that just don't do too well, and then they can't keep servers going, and then they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're like on a PC and you can make your own servers and stuff. A good example is Lawbreakers, which was Blazinski's game, the guy who made Gears of War.
Mm-hmm.
Made a class-based shooter, and I actually thought it was quite fun. It had some problems of its own, and being compared to Overwatch all the time kind of ruined that game in my opinion, and why it didn't do too well. I thought it was a great game, and that's a great example of I just can't play that now. Like, me and a friend used to love playing that game. We were one of the 6 people that played it.
Yeah.
You can't even access it. I can still download it, but when you put it on, it says it's gone. And I feel like that can happen some stage with single player games too, which is crazy. But I do think obviously it already does happen with multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few examples, but that's one that I remember because I actually enjoyed that, and now it's just gone. And it won't come back. You essentially rented the game for a bit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
you're almost renting them. You're not even buying them now.
Well, and I remember the example that I remember the most was Mag for the PS3. Did much the same. But even if we pick games that you didn't like, it's awful when people pay for them. But even games you didn't pay for that you had as a free thing. I mean, I get it; it's a treat, you can take it away. But like PT, that's
great example. That's gone.
And it's not just a matter of who paid, and now that's the problem. People are paying hundreds of dollars just to have this game that's downloaded on a console.
That's ridiculous.
So long as they don't connect to the internet immediately, which no guarantees, but I think people should have the right to own things, and that includes when, I understand when I buy a game, I don't own the intellectual properties therein, but I do own that copy of that game, and if I want to play that game, even if you don't like who I am as a person, then I should be able to do that. And you shouldn't be able to punish me by taking away something that I purchased with hard-earned money, despite my behavior. And if my behavior is that bad, I'll someone who is able to deal with that will deal with it. That's not your place as a gamer. Or a game industry. That's if my behavior is that inappropriate, you want to ban me from being part of other people's things, that's fine. But you shouldn't have the right to take away things that I've purchased with my hard-earned money that will only be played by me and heard by me, and the things I say to it be heard by me as well. Yeah. So that's my thought. And so I definitely prefer physical medium for that.
Another thing too is I just don't want to, like we were saying earlier, see like two companies have everyone else under them. And that's just the games industry. I think it's really bad for just overall, for the industry overall. Like I said, I'm happy that Microsoft got Activision and not an Amazon or a Facebook. But that's not stopping Facebook like from buying Konami or just something random. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Or Amazon buying Ubisoft, and then what happens? And it's just all these like companies are just under like, and I just feel like it's going to end up being really bad. And I feel like there's too much now as well. There's so much choice, like, and it's only going to get more, and the game's going to get bigger and more expensive. Like, can they even continue to fund games like that, especially places like PlayStation? Well, like $100 million games, it's insane.
Well, and Konami had taken their, and I can't remember exactly when about it was, but they took their franchise, because after Lords of Shadow didn't do what they wanted it to do, they took their whole thing and they decided, we're going to make it a part of a pachinko machine.
Yeah.
So I mean, like you had said, if Facebook bought it, what if they decided to make the next 3 Castlevania games exclusive to mobile?
What I mean, I don't want this just constant buyouts from anyone. Like I said, I do prefer PlayStation, but I don't want them buying these companies either. I'd have the exact same reaction if PlayStation bought Activision. The same thing. Yeah. Like, I'm kind of glad they've got them and not someone else, but still, I don't think it's good overall for like the long run.
It's the what is the Latin phrase? De dubos malas minas est sempre elegundum.
You sounded like a Resident Evil 4 villager then.
I was trying to say the kind of, yeah. It's de dubos malas minas est sempre elegundum. It's Latin phrase, a Latin phrase of two evils the lesser must be chosen. But yet again, going to a Witcher quote from the books and from the game, and I assume from the show as well. If I have to choose between one evil and another, I'd rather not choose at all. I don't like the idea of the console makers buying these guys out and becoming juggernauts and monopolies. But I also think that it's an awful thing that these companies are alternatively just deciding to, they either liquidate or fade into obscurity, or they can't survive whatever fiasco they've had to endure, and so because of that they go away on the whole, and we don't, or overall, and we don't get to see them. So it's like, I feel like Activision reached out for a reason, and I feel like that Microsoft purchased them because the franchises they have were just too lucrative. But at the same time, had Microsoft not purchased them, would Activision have had to find some form of bailout from recent failures?
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm sorry, did you have something else you were wanting to contribute on that? Or
another thing, I was kind of curious, but I don't know too much about them, but they're creeping their way into games. Are those NFTs?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that stuff. Like, I don't know enough to really talk about it, but every time I hear about it, it seems fucking sleazy. I don't know enough to have a full opinion on it, but I feel like that's going to be something like Konami are already doing it for the 35th anniversary of Castlevania. You could buy like some NFT of like the map for like one of the games or something weird, and people are buying it thinking they own the rights to it, but they don't own the rights to it. They've just spent an insane amount of money. This NFT thing is just so weird to me.
Yes.
Every time I read up on it, it's like this sleazy promotion. Just sounds just fake. Everything they're saying sounds like they're trying to sell you something like instantly. I don't know how much you know on it. I don't want that going into games too.
No, I completely agree. It's the NFT thing. To me, it's just a lot of people were trying to pitch it as the guy from. There was a show that we watched. It was the guy from. Do you remember BitConnect?
No.
BitConnect was this multi-level marketing scheme way back in the day, and it was just this hype thing where basically what ended up happening is a select few people ended up taking a bunch of people's money and running, and then you find out it's a pyramid scheme and or a multi-level marketing scheme, and that's what anyway. And so the guy that had been the biggest hype man, he's kind of the icon for it. When he did that and came back, he decided that he was going to do NFTs, and what it is it's just a digital token that has, in my opinion, no monetary value, but if people will pay for it, it holds the amount of monetary value that you would have for this digital token. But as far as I know, you can't really, it's not really widely, it's not like Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is cryptocurrency. The established ones like Bitcoin and Electrum are these, you can go and spend those almost anywhere. And you don't have to worry about conversion rates. There's a convenience to cryptocurrency. You don't have to worry about conversion rates in a lot of areas. It's spendable. It's anonymous. There's a lot of good stuff about that. These are supposed to be a cryptocurrency, but in my opinion, they have no universally agreed upon nor intrinsic value. It's just as much as my wife was. People who aren't aware, I do card stuffs. There's a channel on it. I'll eventually get back on, but I do a lot of things with playing cards, manipulations, and
a channel.
Mechanos cards.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a channel called Mechanos Cards. If anyone's interested in seeing gambling slides, cheats, etc., things like that, the basics of magic tricks, all those kinds of things that have to do with playing cards, I'm fascinated with them. Even now, I'm sitting here with a stack of playing cards right in front of me, and I'm
beat cosplays too. We're on the way.
Which one? I'm sorry.
Gambit cosplays. You'll be doing those too.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. No, absolutely. Be doing those. I'll also be doing a couple of Rogue cosplays if you'd like. Now I am a bearded man, so that's going to be difficult, but we'll get it. But she showed me she was looking. I love decks of cards. I love different designs and styles. She was looking for decks of cards for me, for one reason or another, and found out that there are decks of cards out there that sell for $20, $200 to $200, and even more. But most people don't, but Bicycle was selling images of playing cards, which were NFTs. And I'm like, so you buy the Bicycle cards, you buy them for more than the Bicycle cards or for the amount that you would pay for a really, really premium deck, and you actually get nothing. You get no card. So it's the same thing. Like, it's the same thing I don't want in, it's the same thing I don't want in gaming. Like, I don't want to buy a game and then get nothing. And then them say, oh yeah, but it's worth the nothing that you have, at least at some point in time, is worth $150 or however much. Like, I don't like that. I know it's a weird and confusing concept. I hate it. I hate the whole thing.
Well, it's already trickling into games because are you familiar with Stalker 2?
I don't think so.
For Xbox. It's a FPS. It's a lot like Metro, or the Metro series. Franchise of games. It's like that, and it's a new shooter. It's a sequel, obviously. They were going to put NFTs in their game, and there was a shit ton of backlash, and they've stopped it. Now that game's been delayed. Now I don't know if that's the reason it's delayed, but coming out like at the end of the year now on Xbox. It's like it's creeping into games too. I think Ubisoft were doing something weird with Ghost Recon, with NFTs. I might be wrong on that.
Jeez.
It's like trying to trickle in, and so far there's been backlash, but I think some of these companies, like these bigger ones, are definitely going to try and do it.
Yeah, I don't like this. Like I said, I don't like the old digital thing, and maybe I'm old-fashioned. Like, I understand the convenience of having a debit card over cash sometimes, but I've also absolutely been in the circumstance where the debit card did me no good, and I needed cash, and it was nice to be able to have cash. I think it stands the same way here. I don't want that. Now, one thing I would like to see. This is me being weird, maybe. I would love to see us go from disc-based to cartridge-based again. I know that Nintendo's...
That'd be crazy.
Yeah, well, I know Nintendo's already done that, but like, it's just so insane how much... now, granted, the Blu-ray discs have been a lot more damage resistant, but like, and I get that they can hold a ton of memory and all that, but like, like I said, I'm looking at my collection. I have games here that are 30, 40 years old, and there are some of them that I know have been dropped. I know have gotten water all over them. I know have been, and they're fine. They work just fine. You know, worst comes to worst, it needs another battery. I put a new battery in it if it has that memory save thing, which we don't need that anymore. We know how SD cards work. They don't need to be battery powered. And honestly, SD cards are getting to the point of where they can hold as much as these discs can. I would love to see us go back to cartridge-based gaming, and instead of, you know, having to be stuck to these 8-bit limitations, you know, we still have these. We have a half terabyte. Take a look at when you're downloading games. Like, a lot of the games you're downloading are what, 30, 40, 50, up to 80. Sometimes in the case of Halo Master Chief Collection, 200 gigs.
Yeah.
You can go to your local store and buy a 256 gigabyte SD card, or even a 512 gigabyte SD card for, you know, $40, $30. So I like the idea of going back to cartridge-based gaming. You know, having these cartridges that are, you know, maybe an SD card protected by a plastic cartridge with a little reader. And yet again, like, it can go through the ringer. I have a 3DS cartridge that was chewed up by a dog that you can see the teeth marks and everything. You put it in the thing, you put it in the console, still operates just fine. Dog would have done that to the disc. Disc is done. You have to buy another disc or whatever.
It's true. It's like old consoles too. You could like throw them out the window and they'd be okay.
Yeah. Like, I know that's weird. I know that's probably not, you know, the most popular thing out there, but it's not untenable. Like, it's not something that can't be done and can't be held on to. It's just, but yeah, I'd love to see us go back to cartridge. You know, make a sophisticated cartridge design, but go back to cartridges. And, you know, you drop your Xbox nowadays, like you said, it's done. You drop the disc is cracked. Yeah, and you're spending $500 on these things. You know. Meanwhile, my NES has been through the ringer for 40 years, and
same with the controllers too.
Oh yeah,
same time.
Yeah, the controllers. No problem. They're just, you know, built like tanks, but less heavy.
Yeah, it's true.
But so, like, I would honestly, I know that it's kind of the new becomes old becomes new type thing, but like, I think that would be good. I think it'd be nice. We've seen it, like I said, Nintendo's already gone that direction. Now, the Switch is still delicate because it's a portable, home console made portable too, but I honestly think that their whole going back to the cartridge thing is a good move. They're difficult to destroy. They're maybe a little smaller than they need to be because they are easier to lose, and I don't know if their version can, but we can see through our own micro SD cards that there's absolutely no reason why it couldn't hold, after formatting, the same amount of memory as a disc, but be infinitely more convenient. And even with Switch, one of the things with Switch, like, if I want to take a bunch of games to my buddy's house, if I have them digitally, I can do that. If I don't have them digitally, I have to take a whole bunch of games or game cases, or I have to put them all in those little weird, like, binders.
Yeah.
I like it. This is going to sound awful, but I like the fact that I can grab a literal handful of Nintendo games, put them in my pocket, and literally, I can hold 30 of those in one pocket and go to my buddy's house, and nobody would say anything. Yeah. My pockets aren't just over bulging. So, and
true.
So I don't know. Maybe
I don't see it happening, but I kind of agree with you.
That's me. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see a resurgence of retro too. Honestly, I think that. I'd love to see. I get it that it's not difficult. It's not easy to do, but like, I'd love to see a lot of people getting, like, I think a lot of people are getting onto the whole backwards compatibility bandwagon. I'd love to see Nintendo get more on it. I'd like to see them have, more game. I'd like to see them have GameCube compatibility. I'd love them to drop the $60 charge for N64. I'd love to see. I'd love to see full backwards compatibility on PS5. And I'd love to see vendors and stores more frequently carrying, and it can be a hodgepodge. I don't think it necessarily needs to be a full consistent stock like we do with new games. I'd love to see more game vendors carrying retro game collections and I'd love to see gaming become more affordable. That's the big thing. I think that with the past couple of years that we've had and the circumstances, I think everybody's always, I think almost everyone's kind of finding themselves in this constant need of catharsis, and I think that gaming is a great version of that for a lot of people. So I'd like to see gaming become more affordable for people that, you know, need it as well. I'd like, instead of seeing these $10 price hikes for, I mean, if you want to stay digital and everything's going to go digital, and I think I've said this before, I think that physical format should always be more expensive, and
it should not be the same digital. It makes no sense.
Yes, yeah. If you have to buy digital, you get a $20 drop because we didn't have to put we didn't print you a disc or a case or a manual. So, which manuals have gone away anyway, but.
Oh, I miss that. I used to love looking through the fighting game ones and seeing all the characters and stuff.
Oh yeah, when they had the thick. Maybe I'm a nerd too, but like the ones, the PS1 and all those other ones, they had like the power bars, and they show you how strong that character is.
Yeah.
And you'd be that nerd, and you'd be like, oh, that
little stats and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in Tekken, remember Tekken even had their blood types in the early.
All this just random shit that had nothing to do with the game. Just pour it in as extra detail.
I think they said you say that, and you're probably right on that, because I thought the same thing. But I think Japan says that your blood type, your blood type is dictate of whether or not you're a good person. So like, oh, really? Yeah, I believe that there's and I could be wrong. I don't want to misquote this in its entirety, but I think they said like that's how they affiliate good blood, bad blood. Like that's, if your blood type is this, then you're most likely going to be a good person, something like that. I need to do more research, but there's some correlation between your blood type and the type of character you are. So, but yeah.
One more thing is that I just don't want to see Xbox, Nintendo, or PlayStation go away. I don't think they will, but I do think there's a potential future where, like, I don't know, Microsoft buys PlayStation. Not anytime soon. I don't think how much money they have and how PlayStation, how bad of a situation they could possibly end up in the future. You never know. Could swoop in and help them out, or same with Nintendo. Microsoft could buy both of them, like, and they'll all be under one. I hope that never happens, because I just think that's too much. And competition is great.
Oh yeah.
It just benefits like players more. Hopefully all this stuff now pushes Sony to do even better, and I feel like Nintendo have always been at the side, at least since PlayStation and Xbox have been at it. Nintendo just do their own thing, and they're always successful.
Well, I don't think they care. I don't think they care as much.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree with you. I still would like to see. Yet again, I don't want to see an oversaturated one. That's the very issue that caused the video game crash of the of the early '80s. But I wouldn't mind seeing a seasoned veteran in the console game. Like I said, I wouldn't mind seeing a Sega.
Sega were ahead of their time with that Dreamcast.
Oh yeah,
that was ahead of its time. It was a good console too.
Well, and I love the. Not even just the Dreamcast. Like, I love the Saturn. I thought the Saturn was fun.
I love that thing. There's so many fighting games on there.
Oh yeah. Virtua Fighter.
Fighting game machine.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I would love to see pick another planet Sega. I'd love to see you launch a Sega Mercury, or something. I know that was, but and it could be disc based or cartridge based. I wouldn't really care, and just like, and I don't care if it only played for. I don't care if not necessarily if it only played, but I don't care if it predominantly played Sega games. Like, I would be fine with that if the games were coming to the console. But
I have a lot of iconic IP too.
Oh yeah.
Still, obviously you got Sonic, and there's a bunch more. Sonic's just the standout, but they have a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, all of the old ones they still have that they could relaunch too. I mean, you have Rystar, you have one of the partnerships they did too, I guess would count, but you have Streets of Rage, you have Golden Axe. Like, these are all, like, you could go the same route as Nintendo, make a portable console hybrid cartridge, make a new take on those, make a fun new take on those. Heck, reboot the old one if you really want to. Like, the old ones play great. Reboot the old one with better graphics, some additional features, and so on and so forth. I mean, Chronicles of Mystar has done well, so. But yeah, I'd love to see that. That's just me.
think all these companies will be fine. I just think I think a lot of the people go in panic mode too when one of these big acquisitions happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He like fanboys, like Sony's gone, Nintendo's gone. It's like it's not that simple. It doesn't happen like that.
No,
it's fine. You get to play more games, more competition.
Well, they talked about too. I mean, they talked about like unifying all into one, and I think that's an awful idea.
Same.
I don't want to see
competition. It would be like just boring.
Oh yeah.
There'd be no drive to do anything.
Well, yeah. I just like we'll do all these cross-platform. Okay, do some cross-platform stuff. That's fine. You know, let your since you want to stop the fanboy feuding. Let people that have same games on different consoles duke it out. And you're saying, well, it won't be equal. Well, then it's not a competition. Like in terms of, you know, if your console's it's going to be the ultimate critique of your consoles if it's well made. You know, is your thumbstick as responsive as an Xbox thumbstick? That kind of thing. But I don't think people are really going to care about, you know, maybe ultra gamers, but I don't think people are going to care about 0.002 second reaction times, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
Just because the machine can do it doesn't mean we can. That's the beauty of human. Yeah. So, I'm cool with that. I just don't like the idea of it all melding into a single amorphous game company.
I just don't think it's good, no matter who's leading it. Like whether it's Sony's leading it or Nintendo, it's not good.
Yeah.
All under one.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But that's you know, that's just me. But I agree with you. Is there anything else you might want to add on this particular topic before we?
Not that I can think of now. How about you?
Not that I can think of, but I didn't want to go to our outro without you know, giving.
Goodbye, everyone, and done.
Here we go. Good night. But no, all right. Well, then I guess it's been a lot of fun. There was a lot of news, so this is a lot longer than the regular
long one. Holy shit!
3 hours, 20 minutes, 17 seconds right now. Of course, 2 seconds passed while I said right now. So, but yeah, it was fun getting to do this. Obviously, the additional episodes, we were playing a lot of catch up, just trying to get caught up for the new year and all of the announcements that have been made from the end of last year. I will try to break this up so that it's more digestible in multiple setting scenarios and have it out pretty quickly. But in the interim, if you should be looking for good entertainment, great reviews, etc., additional great contents, please feel free to check out AR Games. He's got some great stuff coming. Do you have anything specific you'd like to make announcement of, or?
Nothing specific, but there are some reviews on the way. That's my focus now.
That's
probably in the next few weeks I'll have a review up. So.
Very nice. I'm excited to see your reviews. I feel like when I see your reviews, I get more of. I feel like I get more. There's always. I mean, it's almost impossible to get rid of bias, but I feel like that you do the best job of giving me the face value of it than, you know, the people that get paid to potentially review things better than they should be reviewed.
Right.
So yeah, if you do happen to want to watch great content and also hear some great reviews coming up, I would heavily recommend giving a view to AR Games. There will be a link down in the description. If you should happen to like to hang out, chill, just talk about retro video games, or have fun with my wife and I who are playing games, just kind of our experiences, you may also feel inclined to check out the Retro Room gaming channel, and that's all our channel is dedicated to, is having fun. Though I am hoping to also add some reviews. I'm going to probably focus on old games, so that may not be in anytime soon, but just to have fun, that's what we're established for. And of course, please continue to check out, if you're interested in these kind of podcast gaming news style, the press restart subscribe button. We definitely appreciate the support, and it'll make sure that you're notified whenever new episodes come out with new gaming news that you may want to opine in. If you also have opinions on this, we'd love to hear it in the comments below. Otherwise, I would like to say that I had a great time getting to catch everybody up. Thank you for letting us talk gaming news with you, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.